I'm Mayor Kevin Schilling. I'm calling the special meeting of the Burien City Council to order on April 29th, 2024. The time is 6 p.m. This hybrid meeting is being conducted in person at Burien City Hall and virtually via Zoom webinar. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Councilmember Mata, could you please read the Native Land and Peoples Acknowledgement?
Thank you, Stacy. I found her.
We begin by honoring and acknowledging that this meeting is taking place on the ancestral land and waters of many Coachella tribe people who have since time protected and seen the relationships with the Salish Sea and those precious lands we know as Burien in our home. As government agencies that is occupy indigenous land, it is important that we remind the history of our area and that we work towards fixing the injustice that persists. We acknowledge our region, tribal citizens, their descendants, and their ancestors, and we honor their invaluable contributions to the region, community, identity, economy, history, culture, and future.
Thank you. Will the clerk now take the roll?
Thank you, Mayor. Before I take roll, I would like to share that the City of Burien offers Spanish interpretation via Zoom. So for those attending on Zoom, please select the language you would like to listen to this meeting in either English or Spanish. And on the next slide shows how to do so on your mobile app. And with that, Mayor Kevin Schilling.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Stephanie Mora.
Present.
Councilmember Hugo Garcia.
Presente.
Councilmember Linda Akey.
Present.
Councilmember Jimmy Mata.
Present.
Councilmember Sarah Moore.
Present.
And Councilmember Alex Andrade.
Present.
All are present.
Thank you very much. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda? Is there a second?
I second.
Moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Agenda confirmed unanimously. Okay, the council will now recess to executive session to consider the selection of a site or the acquisition of real estate per RCW 42.30.110 sub B. At approximately 6:30 p.m., the executive session will adjourn and council will reconvene its special meeting. Linda's back, Stephanie's back, Jimmy's back, Sarah's back, Al's back. Okay, we have reconvened at 6:27. Moving into proclamations and presentations. Our first one of the night, Small Business Week proclamation from Councilmember Andrade.
Whereas the U.S. Small Business Administration has celebrated National Small Business Week for more than 60 years, acknowledging the critical contributions of America's entrepreneurs and small business owners. And whereas entrepreneurship encourages innovation and contributes to economic growth for our local economy. And whereas Burien small businesses create jobs in our city, generously donate and participate in beloved community events. And whereas Burien's many small businesses are located throughout multiple commercial corridors, including downtown, First Avenue, Ambon Boulevard, Boulevard Park, Five Corners, and Manhattan. Whereas Burien has a long history of attracting immigrant-owned small businesses, which provide vital goods and services for the community. And whereas the city is dedicated to supporting Burien's diverse small businesses by highlighting them on social media and shoplocalburien.com, providing translated resources and deploying multilingual community connectors to conduct outreach. And whereas the City of Burien's Economic Development Division is committed to providing equal access to opportunity, intentional and inclusive business engagement, and has supported small businesses with grants for pandemic recovery and storefront repair, free and confidential business advising through a partnership with Highline College Small Business Development Center, a supportive ecosystem of community partners to help businesses regardless of their entry or entrepreneurial journey. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Burien, Washington, does hereby ask all Burien community members to join together to proclaim the week of April 28th to May 4th, 2024 as Small Business Week.
Thank you very much. Is there someone to accept the proclamation?
There is. Today I have invited Chris Thompson from Discover Burien. She's the vice president of Discover Burien. As a small business, I've worked with her and her business. Also, Discover Burien works with local small businesses and micro businesses on a daily basis. So I thought it was a great representation of our small business advocates.
Great, go ahead, Chris. Oh, please press the button on the right. Yep,
All
there
right,
you go.
perfect. All right, thank you, Councilmember Andrade, Council. I'm really happy to be here to do this. I believe small businesses are the backbone of our economy and the heart and soul of our communities. 3 years post-pandemic, our country is experiencing a small business boom as evidenced by record new business applications. Every one of these applications represents a dream. I'm honored to be part of an organization that promotes and supports businesses in Burien. Discover Burien serves our community and endeavors to be a positive force for economic growth and civic engagement. By spending your time and dollars in our local businesses, you are truly making dreams come true. Thank you on behalf of our dynamic small businesses and Discover Burien. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any photo? And Chris, you want to come up? We'll do a photo. We'll do a photo with everybody. Okay, next is Jewish American Heritage Month. Councilmember Moore.
Thank you. Whereas Jewish American Heritage Month is observed during the month of May to celebrate and pay tribute to the contributions of generations of Jewish Americans who helped weave the fabric of American history, culture, and society, and the contributions they continue to make today. And whereas 2024 marks the 44th annual celebration of achievements and contributions by Jewish Americans, starting with the establishment of Jewish American Heritage Week in 1980 and its expansion in 2006 when Congress ordered that the country observe an annual Jewish American Heritage Month each May. And whereas Jewish American Heritage Month acknowledges achievements by Jewish Americans in the field of sports, arts, entertainment, medicine, business, science, government, military service, music, and more. And whereas we celebrate the rich heritage of Jewish American community, we recognize tireless work to strengthen the promise of religious freedom and civil rights by joining together with all faiths to reject ignorance and intolerance, teach empathy and compassion, and root out hatred wherever it exists. And whereas Jewish American Heritage Month, we celebrate the hard-fought progress won through the struggle and sacrifice of Jewish Americans, and we rededicate ourselves to building a world where diversity is cherished and faith is protected. And whereas the City of Burien is proud to honor the history, contributions, and achievements of Jewish Americans in our community and throughout our state and nation. Now therefore, the City Council of the City of Burien, Washington, does hereby ask all Burien community members to join together to proclaim May 2024 as Jewish American Heritage Month in the City of Burien and encourage all to celebrate the history and contribution of Jewish Americans in our culture and society.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Moore. And you do not have someone. to
I
pick
do
that.
not have.
Okay, thank you. But let's have a little applause for Councilmember Moore's proclamation anyway. Thank you very much, Councilmember Moore. Okay, Councilmember Andrade, Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month proclamation.
Whereas the national theme for Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month is Advancing Leaders Through Innovation, paying homage to the visionaries and trailblazers who have shaped our AANHPI history and continue to influence our collective future. And whereas Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders have lived and worked in Burien since before its founding, contributing to our city's growth, vibrancy, and economy, regardless of citizenship or immigration status. And whereas Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders make up the second largest communities of color in Burien, with Vietnamese and Tagalog among the most spoken languages in Burien after English and Spanish. And whereas Burien's first mayor, Dr. Arun Javedi, is of South Asian descent, and Burien has elected Asian American leaders throughout its history, including former mayors Wing Wu and Sophia Aragon, Washington State Senator Joe Nguyen, and U.S. Representative Pramila Jayapal. And whereas the institutional racism that Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities face cannot erase the resilience, strength, accomplishments, and joy of the people and their communities now and throughout history. And whereas today's leaders, business owners, and workers across all industries, including small business, arts, nursing, and healthcare, technology, and education, and as elected officials, first responders, and service members, Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders enhance Burien's community and culture. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Burien, Washington, does hereby ask all of Burien community members to join together to proclaim May 2024 as Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month in the City of Burien, and urges all community members to celebrate their history and contributions to the Burien community dated this 29th day of April, 2024.
Thank you very much. And do you have someone to pick this
do
up?
not, no.
Okay, well, thank you very much for reading the proclamation. Okay, Mental Health Awareness Month proclamation, Councilmember Linda Akey.
Thank you, Mayor. Whereas the theme of Mental Health Awareness Month for 2024 is Where to Start Mental Health in a Changing World, and is focused on the first steps toward taking care of your own well-being, and whereas the community where someone lives in plays a significant role in their overall health and well-being, and whereas surroundings can impact if, how, and when needs are met, which in turn affects mental health. And whereas, with early and effective interventions, those individuals with mental health conditions can recover and lead full, productive lives. And whereas, all business, school, government agency, healthcare provider, organization, and community members share the burden of mental health problems and has a responsibility to support mental health and wellness and prevention efforts. And whereas local providers have been responding to the needs of people with mental illness in King County by working to transform the quality of life for people vulnerable to mental illness and addiction through a broad spectrum of care. And whereas the Burien City Council approved new investments in 2021 that pairs social work and mental health professionals with police and fire first responders to help people experiencing mental health crisis. And whereas this is an opportunity to shine a spotlight on the need to strengthen our local mental health care system. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Burien, Washington, does hereby ask all Burien community members to join together to proclaim May 2024 as Mental Health Awareness Month in the City of Burien and urges all community members to help destigmatize and raise awareness of mental health.
Thank you. Do you have someone to
I
accept it?
do.
Oh, great.
I would like to invite Ravina Candy and Caitlin Margaton. Are you here? Yes, please come forward to the podium. They are from Navos, and we have a long history with Navos, providing mental health services in our community. And we are so grateful for all of the work that they have been doing in the city of Burien for all of these years. I'd like to turn it over to you for your comments.
Well, thank you very much for having myself and Caitlin Margaton here. My name is Ravenna Candy. I'm a director at Navos Mental Health for 20 years. Caitlin has served as the medical director there for 2 years. Navos has a long history committed to serving Burien. Navos built its mental health and wellness center on Ambaum and 136th to be embedded in Burien for ease of access for mental health services for all Burien residents. Navos' longstanding presence as the primary provider for behavioral health services in Burien is dedicated to providing services for a whole continuum of care, spanning the life cycle from infant mental health, child and family, school-based, adult and older adult mental health services. We provide specialty services such as in-home children's services with children that have developmental disabilities, substance use disorder treatment, residential and housing services. We also have our own pharmacy at the Mental Health and Wellness Center and our own hospital in West Seattle. Now, in its partnership with MultiCare, we will have more enhanced and reliable services. This partnership provides an opportunity for population health strategy, which allows us to serve the whole person in Burien. This is what we want to continue to be and only get better at as champions of mental health service delivery. MultiCare Behavioral Health has been integrated into behavioral health clinics for years, with the goal of being the largest provider for increasing equal access to care by partnership with the mental health experts such as Greater Lakes and Navos. MultiCare is supporting the infrastructure and helping Navos to grow in the Burien community by leveraging strengths with a whole person approach. We anticipate this benefiting the citizens of Burien. Thank you for our continued partnership between Navos and the city of Burien. We look forward to expanding service delivery in Burien. Navos is committed to helping improve the quality of life for as many children, individuals, and families in Burien as we can help. We work closely with King County, DSHS, the state, and the University of Washington School of Medicine. MultiCare Navos is committed to providing the highest value service using the evidence-based best practices. Navos has been part of the fabric, culture, and community of Burien since the 1960s, and we look forward to a bright future together. We look forward to continued partnership, collaboration, and supporting the Burien community, schools, and neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and come forward for a photo.
Oh, great.
Okay, thank you very much. And now we'll move into our Green Burien Partnership Annual Report. Hello,
Am I on?
you're on.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, community. Thanks for having us this evening. The Green Burien Partnership, the city's environmental justice programming, published its first annual report. The one-pager and the full report is in your council packet this evening. Myself, Josh, Liz, Maya, and Diane, who is one of our alumni from Burien Green Teen, are here to give you the 2023 year in review. Next slide, please. Before we get started on how it's going, we'd like to give a bit of a reminder of how we got here. So in 1999, the Origin program, at the time called Adopt a Park, began in the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Services Department. This program included 5 hours of staff time a week with no specific budget allocation. In 2018, in partnership with Forterra and the Port of Seattle's Airport Community Ecology Fund, the first Urban Forest Stewardship Guide was drafted. That guide included canopy cover increase goals, plans for ongoing community engagement in green spaces, and came with some initial program support. In 2021, you all adopted the Urban Forest Stewardship Plan, and the Adopt a Park program was renamed the Green Burien Partnership. Two more important achievements is that in 2021 and 2022, the Climate Action Plan was passed by you all, and then the Burien Tree Code. Today, the Green Burien Partnership has become an award-winning statewide leader that centers community and environmental justice. In 2023, we supported a program valued at $500,000. 95% of this included already existing staff time and contributions from non-city organizations. Next slide, please. Over the years of investment, the Green Burien Partnership set steep equity goals to build a robust urban forest restoration program that takes actionable steps to center communities farthest from environmental justice. With Burien's limited budgets, success has been made possible through a program built on partnership. We leverage grant funds and data to transform what originally was a volunteer program, acknowledging that a volunteer program falls short of equity goals and isn't one size fits all for the Burien community. Our program model is well known and has begun to be shared throughout the state on how to be successful with a community-based approach and little funds. We're going to take the next few minutes to share what this program looked like during 2023. Josh?
Next slide, please. So what did we do in 2023? Well, we planted 800 trees, which is almost 8 times more than 2022, and 1,060 shrubs. While that's a lot more than we did in 2022, we need to plant 40,000 trees to get to 40% canopy cover, which our plan establishes by 2038. So we've got a little ways to go. Next slide, please. We also monitored and maintained the canopy coverage within the city of Burien. There's 145,000 square feet of weeds removed in 2023, which is approximately 2.5 football fields. There's 510,000 square feet of restoration underway, which is approximately 9 football fields. And there were 54 ivy survival rings created, which is the picture up here on this right is this tree. If you do not remove the ivy, the tree can die. So really, it's important to maintain what we already have in order to grow. Those existing trees are the ones that are providing the benefits that we need. So we really need to invest in that in addition to the planting. Next slide, please. So we also communicated with the Burien community and implemented the Burien Municipal Code in 2023. There were 46 tree-related permits issued on private property. There was over 11,000 postcards mailed about that tree code in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. We emailed 6 newsletters about the Green Burien Partnership to subscribers. We attended 12 events to talk about the Green Burien Partnership, including Shark Garden, Music in the Park, Highline School District, and Bird Fest. Next slide, please. So this map up here is of the Green Burien restoration sites. Those light green areas are the sites, and it's overlaid on the social vulnerability index. And so the Green Burien Forest Stewardship Plan identified areas of the city with social vulnerability to prioritize sites for the Green Burien Partnership work to ensure that we engage all of Burien, including those economically and racially diverse communities, in an equitable manner across the city. The partnership invests in all of Burien's communities and engages members of all ages to build community relationships, repair harm, foster growth, and provide career training to invest in the success of our community, including low-income, ethnically diverse communities long-term. Maps are one tool to look at these inequities on a high level, but we also use boots on the ground and community knowledge to further refine our work sites. A couple examples are Hilltop Park and Salmon Creek Ravine, where there is deep investment in these areas thanks to boots on the ground, which has helped us further environmental justice and address historic inequities. Next slide, please. This is our tree inventory map overlaid on that same social vulnerability index. Those yellow dots are the tree points. In 2023, we inventoried 1,500 trees across public and private property, representing 101 unique tree species. This helps us prioritize management, identify areas of possible pest outbreaks, and track permits on private property. I'll pass it to my colleague Maya, and next slide, please.
Thanks, Josh. Here is our internal Green Burien Partnership team. Most of us are here in front of you today. The Green Burien Partnership is a cross-departmental collaboration within the City of Burien government. Staff from Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Services, Public Works, Community Development, as well as the Communications Division all work together to plan and implement this program. Next slide, please. In 2023, over 18 partner organizations worked together to create and implement the Green Burien Partnership Plan. We truly could not do this work without the help of our incredible partners. The majority of our funding to implement these Green Burien Partnership in 2023 came from funding from these partners. Many of these partner organizations wrote and received their own grants to do this work here in Burien. One of the partner organizations includes the King Conservation District, who employs me to be the Green Burien Partnership Coordinator. In addition to providing my 20-hour per week position to coordinate the program here in Burien, King Conservation District also provides the City of Burien with additional funding to purchase plants and materials to implement this program. Some of the partners listed on this slide here include the Amigos Latinos de Burien and Par Los Niños, who are organizations based here in Burien who are primarily Spanish speaking. These partner organizations allow the Green Burien Partnership to take action towards environmental justice and equity. Next slide, please. The Green Burien Partnership offers both paid and volunteer opportunities for community members to engage in urban forestry here in Burien. In 2023, we had over 300 volunteers donate their time at 35 volunteer events, including Green Burien Day to plant hundreds of native plants at Hilltop Park, as well as Earth Day, MLK Day of Service, and Earth Gay. There are 12 volunteer forest stewards who have adopted a park to host their own stewardship work and volunteer events. However, we recognize that not everyone has the ability to volunteer, but everyone deserves to be involved in urban forestry within their city. To take actionable steps towards equity, we have paid opportunities for both youth and adults to engage in the Green Burien Partnership. Paid forest stewards adopt a park where they do environmental restoration work on their own and by hosting community volunteer events. Currently, paid forest stewards are working at Salmon Creek Ravine, Salmon Creek Park, Arbor Lake Park, and Hilltop Park. These 5 paid forest stewards are trained by Green Burien Partnership staff on habitat restoration. The parks where these paid forest steward positions are offered were selected using that social vulnerability map that Josh showed us on the previous slides, which was created from Washington Department of Health data. The Green Burien Partnership paid forest stewards were selected because of their ability to connect to the neighborhoods surrounding their designated parks to do work in that park. Through this hyper-local community engagement, we're able to invite members of the Burien community into this partnership who were not previously involved. Next slide, please. In addition to these paid positions for adults, we also have multiple paid opportunities for middle and high school age students within our partnership. In 2023, the Green Burien Partnership offered 2 different paid internship programs for Highline School District high schoolers, where they learned about environmental restoration, outdoor recreation, and the calming properties of nature, as well as art and many other things. Through the collaboration of our partners, we are bringing youth farthest from opportunity into green spaces and showing them all of the options that are available for how they can work and enjoy these spaces. Sharks in Restoration, which is now called the Outdoor Innovators, is an internship with students from Innovation High School who are being welcomed back into education and for whom a typical education model does not work. Another paid internship program here is the Burien Green Teen Internship, which we'll be offering for a 3rd year this summer in 2024. Many of you previously learned about this program from a presentation that Gabby and Zach gave from the Parks Department on SEEK funding that was received for that program. And here with us today is Diane, a Highline High School student who has participated in both years of our Burien Green Teen Internship. Please, next slide, and I'll pass it off to Diane.
Hi, my name is Diana Vesca, and I'm a high school junior at Highline High School, and I was an intern for Burien Green Teens for 2 years. My first year, I was a regular intern, but as I joined for my 2nd year, I was an assistant leader. I joined Burien Green Teens because I wanted to learn more about the environment and also because I wanted to know what it felt like to have a job. I learned about topics such as environmental racism and how salmon helped our environment and our quality of life. I learned how to work, for my 2nd year, I learned how to work with different types of people with different personalities and different work styles. I will forever be grateful for Burien Green Teens for teaching me how to be a better person and how to help the earth. Next slide, please.
Thanks. As shown by my colleagues, the Green Burien Partnership has been a joint success in many aspects, from its start as a volunteer-only program to becoming a leader as a social justice-based program with collaboration between multiple departments and external organizations. We are proud of the efforts put forth by all of our partners, volunteers, forest stewards, and staff. Without all of these efforts and the continued support of our city and council, the program would not have the same level of success. As a city with a lean staff and budget, delivering 95% of the $624,000 to run this program via partner donations and existing staff time shows the massive efforts of staff and partners in securing volunteers, materials, grants, and financial support. Next slide, please. Here's a more in-depth breakdown of the programming costs for the partnership. Over $300,000 in partnering organization staff and volunteer time, including 8,100 hours donated by volunteers and partner organization staff. This includes time spent at restoration sites, as well as behind-the-scene hours managing and applying for funding and implementing and organizing opportunities. Materials and stipends donated by partner organizations. This includes plants, stipends, mulch, food, tools, and other materials. Embedded city staff time to manage and implement the partnership. This includes the salaries of the urban forest planner, a portion of the parks recreation coordinator who oversee the Green Burien Partnership, and a portion of the parks and public works maintenance crews time. Burien Parks staff applied for and received grant funding for youth programming, which allowed for general fund dollars to be shifted for one-time funding of the Green Burien Partnership. These funds were one-time and are not available for 2024. This means with current allocated budgets, we have staff time and little additional for services, supplies, and other items to run a robust program similar to the one we've shared with you. Next slide, please. Here we have a quick look at what is on the horizon for 2024. Upcoming volunteer opportunities are available and encouraged. You can view these events at our calendar on CEDAR. Expansion of existing restoration sites, including Seahurst Park, Salmon Creek Park, and Arbor Lake Park. As we continue to engage our community with new opportunities, for the first time this September, we will be participating in Latino Conservation Week. expanded and improved tracking of tree removal and maintenance via collaboration between partnership members and city staff to optimize those efforts. And lastly, we are very excited for an updated canopy cover analysis, which will benefit our restoration and canopy coverage goal tracking. Before we move on to questions, I would like to once again highlight the tremendous amount of effort and time that goes into the running of this program by staff and partner organizations. The partnership currently relies heavily on just a few staff and donated time to manage and ensure its success. This means for a sustained program, we need an annual budget allocation from the general fund dedicated to Green Burien. The partnership is a testament to the collective vision and continued support of our city and our community members. Next slide, please. At this point, we'd love to open it up to questions from the council.
Thank you very much, and congratulations on a phenomenal program that's gone, I mean, for years, and we're gonna keep going for years, and the roots of it are planted, I guess I'll say. Any questions from council? I'm sure Councilmember Moore might have a couple things. Go ahead, Councilmember Moore.
I just want to thank you not only for the work that you do, but for really exemplifying what it means not to be siloed and not to work in a narrow focus. The amount of collaboration that this team does, I bring it up as an example all the time about how much can be done when people intentionally and you know, delightedly collaborate together with each other. I did have one question about it kind of goes into the tree equity question, which is when I look at the map of where the trees are, there's a lot of them in the, it's not just that there's a lot of trees there, but that it's a forest environment. So it seems like the trees self-replicate there and there's new trees coming up. Is that a goal in some of the places that have less tree equity, that at some point you could stop planting and trees would start growing on their own in those places if they were well maintained and it was well treed?
Yeah, I think that definitely is a goal. It takes a long time to get to that spot. And so we do have different stages in the plans of like where the restoration's at. So I think a lot of it is really in the early stages. This updated canopy cover analysis that we're going to do will really help us inform kind of where some of that is and be able to answer some of those equity questions on a high level for tree equity. But in terms of restoration and sustaining those trees, it takes a long time to get to that point. Maya, do you want to add anything?
I'll just add that many of our sites are very heavily covered currently in English ivy and blackberry. And while those are covering the canopy floor, pretty much none of that natural regeneration happens. And so until we get to the point where those weeds are rid of the forest, that natural regeneration won't happen. And so a lot of, as Josh was saying, that early term investment needs to happen to get those forests to a point where they are able to naturally regenerate. Unfortunately, in our urban forest spaces, because we have the interface of everyone who's, living and recreating in these areas, we also bring weed seeds in with us as we recreate. So a lot of the time it's relatively impossible to get to a point where in these urban areas, we won't need any human interaction to be able to keep our forests healthy. But we call that phase 4 of our 4-phase model. Phase 4 means that we have almost no weed coverage, less than 5% at a site, and they're doing some of that natural regeneration. So currently, none of our sites are in phase 4. We hope that we can get there.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation. Okay, moving on to council reports. For folks on council, if you have anything to report. Councilmember Akey.
Just wanted to say that I was in attendance at the Mary's Place fundraising event. Mary's Place has been wonderful in what they've been providing. They had announced that day a $1 million grant for the building of an expansion of their shelter and housing. So really excited for Mary's Place, and it was wonderful to be a part of that. And that's all my reports today.
Thank you. Any other council reports? Councilmember Moore?
I have a couple. I first of all wanted to report on meeting. It's been a while since we met, so I think this is new, but I attended the K4C. Did I report on that? Okay, that means I have to remember what it stands for. King County Cities Climate Commitment, I believe, meeting, and had a really interesting discussion on the plans the county is making for extreme heat survival during summers, and how the county may be able to extend some of its services to the cities within King County. Currently, King County, people may or may not be aware, but it has inequitable heat zones throughout the county, and some of the places that have the worst extremes of heat are not part of the K4C, so some of the discussion was around how to extend that reach a little bit. And I also, Liz Wonder and I also met with a really interesting group of youth ambassadors, climate ambassadors, that are exploring the possibility of working out of high schools in Burien to become climate educators, not just within their high schools, but to use Burien's climate action plan as a civics coursework to teach climate action in a greater capacity. The meeting ahead is going to be hard, and I also want to reflect that we missed 2 meetings this month, and one of them was not voted on by this body. And I understand from conversations that there were gaps in staffing that led to this decision, but I would like to call for scheduling changes to be made as council body decisions in the future. And I also want to briefly state that at an April 26th press conference was called without 24-hour prior public meeting notice, and without the knowledge of at least this council member. As a council, it's incumbent on us to act as a body, and all the more so in difficult situations such as we're facing right now. So I call on the city of Burien and all my fellow council members to scrupulously follow the open public meeting laws and to err on the side of caution in making decisions when to do so.
Thank you. Any other council reports?
I just wanted to make a comment, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Just echoing and doing Councilmember Sarah Moore on the latest. Don't have anything else to report. Just wanted to make sure folks are aware I'm present.
Thank you. Any other council reports? Okay. Moving on to the city manager's report. If you have something to report to us.
I do, Mayor. Thank you. Thank you, Council. Today's a especially lengthy manager's report, so my apologies in advance. I'll start off with just some notice about personnel. We have like to acknowledge Megan Brem that has accepted the position of the Deputy City Clerk. So Megan, thank you for moving up. Thank you. A few other items to note. Robin Tismack recently retired as Deputy Director of Public Works. He has returned to us on a limited basis, and so we'd like to welcome Robin back for his ongoing work. And then also Liz Steed has commenced her tenure and has taken the reins as Director of Community Development, and Liz is here with us. Moving on, I have some interesting news to share about work performed by city staff. Last week, staff members volunteered their time to perform a cleanup event. We had 14 staff members that participated in a community cleanup in Boulevard Park. In the course of 1 hour, staff collected over 128 gallons of trash from the community. So we're very pleased to have that type of contribution for members of the team. Would also like to share with council some sad note. It's never easy to share this news, but necessary as it honors members of our team that contributed to our overall success. On April 1st, our team in parks and also team as a city as a whole We learned of the passing of one of our longtime team members. Alice Marie Hobson began working for the city of Burien in April of 2010 as a facility attendant in the rental program. She was a longtime member of the team, and she is missed every day. We wanted just to honor her memory by sharing her name with you all. Some news to share from Washington. We've learned that Congress has had a greater effort on the FAA reauthorization bill. In April of 2023, START coordinated a DC fly-in event. Representatives from START communities met with federal officials to advocate for the needs of respective communities. Trip included members of our very own Burien City Council. Last night, early this morning, we learned that Congress released the final version of the FAA reauthorization bill. We have great news to share. 4 of the 7 START federal policy priorities are included in the legislation. Those specific points are Section 765, Regional Airport Capacity Report, Section 785, Renewal of FAA Environmental Mitigation Pilot Program, Section 791, Ultrafine Particle Study, and lastly, Section 792, the Aircraft Noise Advisory Committee, and 1-year deadline for action on FAA noise policy review. So these are great successes for START community, which includes Burien, so we'll hopefully have more positive news to share on that as it moves forward. We have some great news to share from the Department of Natural Resources and then also in Burien. City of Burien received $125,000 in direct investment from DNR for use at Hilltop Park. Funds from DNR are meant to invest in communities with the greatest amount of need, as identified by a data tool used by DNR's Community Forestry Program. Boulevard Park ranked 2nd highest of all areas reviewed. Funds will be used over a period of 4 years and meant to support program on environmental justice. A few of the items that will be focused include professional crew work to remove 30,000 square feet of blackberry by dirt core, green career training programs with partners in environmental and local immigrant refugee communities, green career training programs for youth in Highline schools, and also temporary irrigation and purchase and planting of plants and shrubs. So we're looking to have some improvements to Hilltop Park. Some updates from our community connectors. The community connectors are actively supporting community engagement efforts around the neighborhood grants program throughout the first quarter of 2024. And we'll be reviewing monthly briefings on city programs and projects via staff presentations. And just wanted to remind council that they authorize an expansion of the community connectors program. And so we would like to thank you for that because it helps to maintain connected communities throughout Burien that are traditionally underrepresented in City Hall. So thank you for that, council. One event information of note, Mosier Spring Pottery Sale will be Saturday, May 4th. So if anyone is short of pottery items in their home, please feel free to attend. At the request of council, staff worked with DESC to obtain a copy of its Good Neighbor Policy, which is to be signed by all residents that move into the facility. Copy will be shared by council or with council through email, but I would like to just share with everyone just some of the points, essentially the meat of the Good Neighbor Policy. No littering or loitering in the neighborhood, no yelling or fighting on the property or in the neighborhood. Fighting, menacing behavior, or physical or verbal threats of harassment are not allowed. Violence or discrimination towards person based on race, creed, color, sex, ancestry, sexual orientation, parental status, religion, age, national origin, marital status, gender identity or expression, use of service animal, pregnancy, political affiliation or ideology, military or veteran status or disability is not tolerated. Firearms of any kind are not allowed in the building. Nothing may be used as a weapon to assault, menace, or intimidate. No bringing in guests through the back door. No harassing neighbors, store vendors, etc. No panhandling in the neighborhood. No purchasing drugs or drug paraphernalia in the neighborhood. So those are just a few, if not all of the items included in the Good Neighbor Policy. I'd like to share with you all an update from our Human Services Division. The city received 81 applications with the requests totaling over $2.6 million. Approximately $513,000 are available to allocate, coming from the following 2 sources. First source is the $8.89 per capita allocation to the Burien Human Services Fund, equaling roughly about $467,000 per year. On the second source is a $46,000 pot of money And this is program funding from the federal government's Community Development Block Grant. So the Human Services Commission will spend the summer months reading, scoring, and discussing the applications, and will present funding recommendation to the City Council in the fall for approval. Lastly, I'd like to end with a bit of great news. I'm very pleased to share with you that the city applied for and was awarded $1 million in grant funding from King County to address family homelessness. Funds will be used to support Mary's Place Family Shelter redevelopment project, which will expand the shelter's capacity to more than 200 family members each night. This project, in partnership with Mercy Housing Northwest, will be co-located with 90 units of new permanent affordable housing, in addition to coordinated management services, amenities, and community resources. So we're very, very pleased to have applied and received that grant. And that is all. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the city manager? Councilmember Moore.
I have what I think will be a short question. The community grants that Burien gives, the small grants to neighborhoods, are those getting used? Are people taking advantage of that opportunity and doing things in their neighborhoods?
Short answer, yes. We did receive an application recently. I believe it's for the Shark Garden. They are looking to implement a new solar device. And I had it in my notes, but because it was rather long, it didn't make the cut. But yes, there are organizations that are making use of that pot of money. And at the very least, I know of that organization that has applied for a grant through that program.
Thank you. It's an exceptional opportunity. I just want to make sure that it's really being taken care of.
Any other questions for the city manager? Okay, moving on to public comment.
Thank you. Public comment guidelines are summarized on the screen, and it can be viewed in section 5 of the council rules of order. The deadline to sign up to speak or submit written comments for this meeting was 5:00 p.m. Community members may state their name and city of residence and speak for 2 minutes or less. And the total time for the comment period is 30 minutes. Comments are prioritized as follows. First, Burien residents. Second, Burien business owners or their representatives. Third, employees who identify Burien as their home or business location. Also, please select English for English-speaking Zoom attendees to hear any interpretation. At this time, staff will share the public comment sign-up list. For those in person, please speak at the lectern, and for those on Zoom, please prepare to unmute yourself. Currently, there are 38 community members signed up to speak, and the first person signed up to speak is
Heather, before we do really quick, so there's 38 folks already signed up. We only have 30 minutes allocated right now. Could I have a motion to extend public comment by 30 minutes? Just already?
I move to extend public comment 30 minutes.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to extend public comment by 30 minutes for a total of 60 minutes. All those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye. Councilmember Garcia? I think he's not on anymore. Okay, so that's unanimous approval to extend public comment by 30 minutes. And just a reminder, no cheering, clapping, snapping, screaming, yelling, calling people by name. And for addressing the council, address the council as a whole, not individual council members, and no addressing staff members individually. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And with that, the first person signed up to speak is Charles Schaefer.
So tonight, I just want to express my disappointment with council's continued refusal to take responsibility for the results of your policies, particularly what's going on our streets. You know, several of you have blamed me, you've blamed other folks in our community, and we're all just doing our best to try to help people in whatever situation they're in, but ultimately it comes down to council and the policies you enact. And with that in mind, you do have the opportunity to do something good tonight. You have the opportunity to house some people. And I certainly hope you'll take that, but whatever you decide, just remember that it's your responsibility. One other thing that I'm particularly disappointed by is that apparently a couple of council members feel like it's okay to take pictures of people when they're deceased. Unfortunately, we had someone pass away on the street recently, and there were a couple of council members taking pictures of that and using it, I guess, to promote their own agendas or their views or whatever. And that's completely disgusting and inappropriate behavior. Deputy Mayor Mora, Councilmember Andrade, you should be ashamed of yourselves.
Charles, please no, please no.
Thank you. Next is Stephen Lampier.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I originally planned to express gratitude to you for responding to my call for safety measures at the Ambom Curve bulwark. Someone placed 3 orange COB traffic cones at the apex of the bulwark. That was until recently when they disappeared, possibly stolen. I again asked for more permanent safety measures in the form of reflectors attached to the bulwark. Secondly, I wish to thank the council for proclaiming Jewish Heritage Month. Jews have been at the forefront of progressive movements in this country, from the labor movement to the civil rights movement and more. In that spirit, I will recite a yahrzeit prayer in remembrance of the young human who recently died on the street. The human soul is a light from God. May it be God's will that the soul of nature shall enjoy eternal life through those who knew and loved him. Amen.
Thank you. Next is Kelsey Van Heet.
Hi, council. Tonight, I know one of the agenda items are the zoning considerations needed to enable the tiny home village. I think this is an important opportunity for us as a community, and I hope that you as a council can come together and help advance this project. I think no matter how much we've disagreed about the solution to homelessness, this is an opportunity that will help both the unhoused and business owners by addressing the issue that seems to be causing the most tension right now, which is the tents on the sidewalk. I think it doesn't matter what got us here or what delays or what positions who took or who campaigned against you. Right now, you're the ones with the power. You're the ones with the ability to make positive change in our community. And I really hope that you take this opportunity and that you don't let it go to waste. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is David Gould.
Good evening. My name is Dave Gould, and I am a Burien resident. Yeah, clearly there are a lot of problems in Burien today. You know, finances, homelessness, increase in robberies and commercial burglaries and such. And these obviously need prompt attention and solutions. But tonight, I really want to focus on what I think are some of the positive aspects regarding the present and future of Burien. First up is the new and improved city council, which I think is off to a very good start. And second, I think the work by our city manager and attorney, Carmen Newsom, are doing very good work in spite of the very challenging circumstances we find ourselves in. Now, in no particular order, I would say that Mayor Schilling's emphasis on Burien being open for business, the 3 H's, healthcare, hospitality, and housing, as well as its Thursday videos, which are both informative and educational. I especially like the idea of neighborhood cafes, watering holes, and such. These are great places for third-party hangouts and a way to build community. Downtown Burien is a 15-minute walkable community with banks, restaurants, coffee shops, bakeries, and so on. And that, I think, is really wonderful for the people who drive here and come here and be able to park and walk. I also think the potential 160-foot high building limits in downtown Burien is absolutely the right way to go, as it would provide significantly more needed housing, jobs, and services, not to mention an increased tax base for the city. The Burien Comprehensive Plan is almost complete, and while some of it is aspirational, the plan is a very good start to transform Burien into a major urban core city over the next 20 years. I could go on, but my time is up. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Sierra Campbell.
Hi, I'm Sierra Campbell. I'm a resident of Burien. I've never been here before, so I'm nervous, but I could no longer stand on the sideline and see what's happening to the city that I love, so I had to speak up. My brother was homeless, living in North SeaTac Park, which public camping is legal there, and that doesn't seem to stop it. And he worked here in Burien at the little fancy Italian restaurant, and I had to help him get an outfit so that he could go to an interview. So we talk a lot about what we can do to try to address homelessness in our city. And I just think that we should be focusing our attention on how we can alleviate the barriers to getting work and to getting housing, rather than having petty squabbles with our King County Sheriff's Office and putting it in litigation. So I'm asking you from the bottom of my heart, for the people that I love in this community and the people that are vulnerable and are being subjected to people that are wanting to come in and take advantage of them, to update the zoning so that you could erect the tiny house village as a temporary solution, and also to put together some public restrooms and some public dumpsters that can be used by our community, including myself, who, by the way, when I leave the house very often, because I work and live here, need a place to go. And sometimes I'm just out in the park. So that's all I have to say. I'm really nervous, but I won't be as nervous next time. And I really hope you take what I had to say seriously. And that is it.
Thank you. Next is Alicia Asgar on Zoom. Alicia, would you please unmute yourself?
Good evening, council members. Thank you for having me. My name is Elisha Asgar. I am a resident of Burien, and it's my pleasure to join this council for the first time ever. I come here to speak on behalf of my community regarding the prospective development of a parcel of land located at 14404 18th Avenue Southwest for up to 4 house sites. I think this would be a travesty for the city of Burien, which would lose amazing green acreage, which is used by our members of our city, our children, to give us access to the outdoors. And I think it would have an immense adverse impact on both the city and the community. I implore the city, on my behalf and on the behalf of our children and our community, to step in and acquire this piece of land for the use of the entire citizenry, both of Burien and our general area, our region. In fact, folks come from afar to enjoy the beachfront. They walk the trails, and that will all sadly be lost if 14404 18th Avenue Southwest is developed for residential purposes. Thank you, and have a lovely evening.
Thank you. Next is John Rosardi. John, would you please unmute yourself?
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is John Rosardi. I'm a 34-year resident of Burien. I live down in Seahurst. I want to echo what the previous speaker just requested concerning the property at 14404 18th Avenue Southwest. This is adjacent to Seahurst Park. I agree. This is a great opportunity to further protect our park, and I really enjoyed the Green Burien report earlier, and thank the members of that group with regards to what they were presenting and saying. This somehow dovetails with that. My understanding is the council is possibly willing to, or have somebody in the city reach out for grant funding for this acquisition. That would be wonderful. I want to thank the landowner, who apparently is willing to sell the property to Burien if there is grant funding. I'm also a beach naturalist for the Seattle Aquarium, and the importance of every acre in Seahurst Park is vital to the nearshore tide lands as well as the tidal zones. Plants and animals rely on the nutrients that come down from the entire park bowl into the water. So, and I regularly tour visitors from not only Burien, but also internationally. We have people from other countries, other states, and they marvel at this park, which is actually a nationally known park restoration effort that the city did a great job on. So we should preserve it as much as possible. I really request that you please take action on this and authorize the pursuit of grant funding. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Next is Jennifer Fachamba.
I'm Jennifer Fichamba. I reside in Burien. Zero leadership, zero progress, zero kindness, zero empathy. Council and city manager, you have held all of the power the last year to do something significant to make a change. I can guarantee no one sitting here today wants people living in tents on the streets of Burien. And this could have been resolved a year ago if some council members weren't spending their times grandstanding and stalling. Enough finger pointing and it's time to take action in designated spot for the tiny home village. Because regardless of whose fault folks think it is, council and city manager are the people with responsibility and authority to act. I think it's interesting that we have $1 million for Mary's Place and everyone is excited about that. We've been sitting on $1 million for a year now and have done nothing with it for a tiny home village. Take action tonight in a positive manner.
Thank you. Next is Dan Milstead.
I'm Stan Milstead, over 40-year resident of Boulevard Park in Burien. Good evening, Burien residents. Respect and leadership. Big words. Respect is earned. It does not come with a position. I respect leaders. They work to bring people together. They work to find solutions to tough problems. They lead by example. They don't deflect responsibility, they own it. They don't look for personal acknowledgement. They look for the cause of the problem, not whose fault it is. They earn respect, they do not expect it. An old saying, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. We're all part of the problem and we all need to be part of the solution. I include myself in that equation. I don't know the answer to homelessness and drug addiction, but I've recently gotten more involved with doing what I can to try to be part of the solution. I strive to work together with others to find answers. I will try to be more transparent, to give credit to good decisions and not deflect blame. Later tonight, you, our city council, can earn respect and show you our leaders by moving forward with $1 million offered by the county. It won't solve all the problems, but it can be part of the solution. We had another death on our streets this last week. I would like to observe a moment of silence out of respect for the loss of another human life. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Kevin Hayes on Zoom. Kevin, would you please unmute yourself? Haynes, I'm sorry, Kevin Haynes.
Yeah, hi, I'm Kevin Haynes. I am a third generation resident of Burien and Seahurst. And I would like to ask the council to please pursue any relevant grants to purchase that property abutting Seahurst Beach Park. My family and my dogs have enjoyed those trails for many decades at this point, and that green spaces are a precious commodity at this point, and we have the opportunity to improve and save one that has meant a lot to me, my family, and this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Terrence C. Jorgensen.
Thank you. Council, mayor, manager, staff. Thanks for all you do. That was a great report we had tonight on the Green Burien Partnership. So thanks to all the people that participated in that. That's going to be really important for us as the climate changes. Everything we can do, whether it's paint your roof white or whatever. I'd really like to see the whole community come together and participate on committees or just individual meetings, anything that can bring people together and solve the problem that we have right now on the street. And I just second what everybody has said about Save Seahurst. I think it's very important, whether we have the staff and the money in the city or whether we have to go outside for it. But maybe the city can direct other people on what they have to do to help with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is,
Before we move on, could folks who are in front of the doors, could you find seats in the audience, please? We can't have doors blocked for fire code. Yeah, people can come on in. Thank you.
all right. Next is Omaha Sternberg on Zoom. Omaha, would you please unmute yourself?
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Omaha Sternberg and I'm a Burien resident. The amendment to change the zoning laws to be in compliance with state law and that had been proposed by the Planning Commission is now finally up for a council review. The council now has 2 different recommendations to review. With that said, I remind the council that any recommendation that includes, quote, cannot be located within 1,000 feet of an elementary or secondary school, playground, recreation center or facility, childcare center or public park, unquote, is still in violation of RCW 35.21.63, 683, excuse me, or RCW 35A.21.430, as neither of these statutes provide any exemption for either transitional or emergency housing for such things. Preventing more than one transitional housing encampment of the city at any one time also violates these RCW statutes for the same reason. I would recommend that there be no specific number for limitations on how many people can stay in transitional housing. Rather, I would recommend a number of persons per feet yards or meters. With this in mind, I asked the City Council to review the version of the Planning Commission motion which staff proposed amendments to. This is the best and most legal motion that the City Council should consider, and I ask them to pass it. Also, because you will be reviewing the calendar, I ask that you add time to implement more of the Burien Climate Action Plan. This plan was passed in November of 2021, as mentioned earlier. However, implementation of the plan was only performed in 2022, and it is now 2024. And though the Burien Green Partnership has done a great job on saving more of our tree canopy, we need so much more. This plan is ready to move forward this year. Perhaps creating a citizen-run climate action committee would be helpful. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next is Rocco DeVito.
Hello, thank you for hearing from me tonight. My name is Rocco DeVito. I'm a Burien resident. I'm glad to hear that we'll be talking about the zoning for the King County funded tiny home village tonight. It's imperative that we move forward on this project with all due haste. The City Council has sat on its hands for too long, dragging out the process, cutting outreach services, and providing no information to the community. Please use the power that you have to work together to find a solution instead of filming the problem on your phones. You say the county needs to step up, and you've heard tonight, they've collectively given us $2 million, which I believe is something like 5% of our budget. We need you to present solutions, not just complain to Jonathan Cho. Approve the tiny home village zoning so that we can do what we all want, which is to get folks off of the street and start the process of healing our town. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you. Next is Riley Barton.
Hello, thank you, council. I'm here to ask the council to take action to protect the land that abuts Seahurst Beach. I use those trails every week to do trail running, and when I do, I see outdoor schools, I see kids building forts, I see Cub Scouts doing natured hikes, walkers, people with dogs, and people doing their own trail improvements out of love. This is a very unique space. We have Lincoln Park to the north and Saltwater State Park to the south, but other than that, there really isn't a place as special as Seahurst Beach. So protecting this land is very important to me and the people who use it. Also, as a runner, we don't have sidewalks in a lot of parts of Burien, and so having safe trails to run is a safe place for people to get exercise. So what do you get for your investment? You get forested green spaces for children to explore. You get safe places for citizens to recreate and exercise. You get people traveling to Burien because they know of our beautiful Seahurst Beach Park, and you get families returning and remaining in Burien, like myself, who grew up in Burien and moved back here in 2010. So in closing, forests don't come back. We need to protect them at all costs because once they're gone, they don't return. And anyone in here is free tomorrow and wants to go running and see why this place is so special to me, come hit me up after the meeting. Thank you.
Next is Zoe Vermette. Zoe, I believe you're on Zoom. Would you please unmute yourself? Zoe, if you can hear me, please unmute yourself at this time. Okay, we'll circle back. Next is Anna Salazar, who is also not on Zoom. So next is Darla.
Hello, Council. Darla here, Burien resident. I'm here to thank this council for staying true to the Burien residents and business owners, and to our city manager, Adolfo, and Attorney Newsom, also for their hard work in doing their utmost in trying to keep all of Burien safe. Thank you. I'm here to remind you that wanting a safe city free of open-air drugs, crime, prostitution, and people using our sidewalks as a latrine is not racist. It is not homophobic, and it's not any of the things that you're going to call the majority of the Burien residents and business owners when what we're asking for is a safe city for all of us. Do not bring more mentally ill and drug addicts into our city. People are dying, and based on the decisions from past councils, it's your fault. Burien has done enough, has been taxed enough, and yet the crime has exploded due to the decisions of a communist and socialist few. Yes, we do see you. The answer must be no. It must be no to the bribe of King County, no to rezoning of our public land to allocate for tiny home villages. Remember, it will never, ever, ever be enough for these people who advocate for drug addicts and mentally ill people to live on our streets, to watch them die. It will never be enough. Stay true and stay strong. We're going to navigate this road together. And I ask that our Chief Ted Boe please fight back against the county.
No individual.
Thank you.
groups.
Next is Justine Edgar.
Hello, I'm Justine Edgar. I'm a Burien resident. I want to thank the council, the majority of the council, for supporting the lawsuit against the King County Sheriff's Office and the county executive for trying to politicize the Burien Police. The intent, in part, of the King County executive in the King County Sheriff's Office is to put Burien into an economic death spiral. That means that long enough taking no action drives businesses as well as residents from the city. And when it reaches a critical amount, then what happens is it is not cost effective to run the city any longer. Okay, and that is exactly what their goal is. If you want to know more about it, look at the materials by the Brookings Institute and a recent magazine article by The Economist. The tiny village model that we were given $1 million for, which is very cheap and chintzy on the part of the county. It is not enough to even economically put it up and run it for 1 year in this city, will drive Burien more into an economic death spiral. For that reason, I do not support it. And until the county comes forth with enough money so that it is feasible to run it economically, so that we're not in an economic death spiral, so it doesn't drive people out of the city, I don't support it. Hopefully, the city and the council will not enter into contracts if they go with this tiny house village with 3 homeless industrial complex providers, DESC, Lehigh, or Catholic Community Services, who are known for overcharging for their services. There are other providers that can do that. Lastly, I would encourage the businesses as well as the residents to form a coalition against what the King County Sheriff's Office is doing, and that is inaction and
Thank you.
absorbing that in
Thank you.
our ordinance. Thank you.
Next is Lindsay White on Zoom. Lindsay, would you please unmute yourself?
Hello, Council. My name is Lindsay White. I'm a Burien resident and also a Burien business owner and mother of a child that goes to Kennedy High School. First, I want to speak as a parent. There's an entire generation of children who have not been able to use the Burien Library. Kids don't feel safe to go to the sprinkler park, go in to check out books, and it's a tragedy for our community on many levels. Books are a key to keeping children engaged, educating them, and giving them space to imagine. And the fact that so many children have not been able to use the library because of what is going on in the streets is a disservice to our community. As a business owner, we have begged for years, literally years, for help. We are going into our 20th year in business, and I feel like at least half of those years have been spent asking for help so that we do not have people doing and selling drugs on our property, prostitution actively going on our property, people breaking into our crawl spaces. It's crazy. Council, we have to step up and make sure that the county is doing their job, the job that we pay them millions of dollars for. And the fact that we can't get them to control what's going on 152nd gives me no faith that a tiny home village next to Kennedy High School, where my daughter is a freshman this year, where my son graduated last year, there's no way that if they're not going to take care of the open drug use that's going on in the street right now, that they're going to be able to monitor what goes on, not only inside, but outside of the tiny home camps that seem to draw tons of problems for the neighborhoods that they're in.
Thank you.
A tiny home camp. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is KA, or
I sound stupid.
KA, would you please unmute yourself?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'd just like to also say that I support doing everything that we can to preserve Seahurst Park and enhance it. I hope that there is a way to get grant funding so that we can purchase that land. It is definitely an important asset for the people in Burien and also for visitors that come to Burien. And then secondly, I'm just brokenhearted about how things are going on, in downtown with the homeless population. I mean, it's so hard for business owners, residents, and people are dying, and it just breaks my heart. I don't know, I don't have the answers in how to deal with this. I do think it's important, that homeless are not staying on the streets for long periods of time. I mean, just a check-in, having to move once a day. I mean, chances are that would definitely save some lives. And with this change in zoning that we're talking about, a tiny home village, pallet homes. And, there's been multiple instances in other tiny home villages where there has been problems. I mean, Licton Springs up in the Northgate area is one that comes to mind. I mean, that only lasted a short period of time, and there were a number of problems that were associated with it. I'm just thinking the best way forward is to get people into shelter, even if it's congregate shelter, and get services in there so that they're ready for permanent shelter wherever that may be, and, services. So that's what I think is more important, right? At this point, try and help as many people
Thank
as
you very
possible
much.
start on that path. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Daniel Martin.
Sweeps are not services. My friend Nature died in front of City Hall on Saturday. He's the fourth person to die while unsheltered in Burien this year, adding to the 7 who died outside last year. At least 380 people died outside in King County last year. Without shelter, people die. Burien is a beautiful, vibrant, historically significant, multicultural, multi-class community that crosses boundaries and builds bridges across divides between the religious and the non-religious and the anti-religious, between conservative and liberal, old and young. We've been building bridges, and our community is connecting the entrepreneurs and the capitalists, service providers and police, generous donors and grassroots support. We've been building community one smile at a time. It makes all the difference to recognize the humanity and dignity of the other, no matter what their struggles are. My organization formed, organized, and worked without sufficient funding this winter to keep our community alive. I had the honor to be site manager at Sunnydale Village, South King County's first sanctioned supervised encampment. Nature was one of my residents, one of the 100+ people experiencing homelessness, that we provided dry ground, a warm cup of chocolate, and a place to huddle out of the rain this winter. One of the 65 people, 5 dogs, and 1 cat who were left stranded at the end of the 90-day encampment agreement. I loved Nature. This whole time it has been in council's hands what to do about what some people call the homeless problem or the tent regulation. The county has been begging to throw money at us to host transitional housing, to fund wraparound services and construction materials to help those needing to move up the housing continuum. Anywhere, absolutely anywhere in Burien, as soon as you say yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next is Jen Powell.
Good evening, Council. You heard a lot of support tonight and for well over a year for the tiny home community and the rezoning that you approved last November. It's actually been pretty discouraging to attend these meetings and speak when you don't acknowledge or discuss legitimate concerns that you don't agree with. For example, in public comment, I said that the anti-camping ordinance would result in lawsuits, which proved to be true, yet you didn't explain your reasoning for taking that risk. Multiple people have given you proven statistics that the housing first method works and is superior to criminalizing homelessness, yet you don't explain why you're adamantly opposed to this proven strategy. You've heard directly from your unhoused constituents that they need shelter here in Burien, but you don't explain to them why you're refusing them that. You claim that you're providing 600 shelter beds without explaining that the majority of them don't serve the people in need on our streets right now. This tiny home community does. When you ignore these concerns, you make us feel unheard and unrepresented. To speak to what I can only assume is your motivation given your history, this tiny home community isn't a short-term gain, but it is increasing the revenue and standard of living in Burien. It's a long-term plan for that, but it's the right one that benefits everyone. The current support of businesses that contribute to the city's bottom line right now is a short-sighted strategy that will end up benefiting no one. There's another opinion you likely disagree with, so again, I ask that you not ignore us, but explain your arguments and decisions to us. And please save Seahurst. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Danny Lange.
Good evening. Hi there, my name is Danny Lang. I have officially been a resident of Burien for 2 months, 2 weeks, and 2 days. My wife and I have owned and operated a gardening company working in the greater Seattle area since 2020. And we now live in the Lake Burien neighborhood, which is a short walk from the south entrance of Seahurst Park. We took our first walk through Seahurst about a week ago, and we were greeted by the little green sign at the entrance of the park, informing us of the possibility that it could vanish before our eyes. After that, our walk was bittersweet. The rest of the journey down the hill was filled with a mix of joy, amazement, mourning, and grief. Imagining what the loss of this vast native habitat would mean for the ecosystem and community of Burien was heartbreaking. To learn that there are outdoor programs like South Sound Nature School that rely on the park to teach children about the native ecosystems of the Pacific Northwest, and knowing that they would lose this hidden gem was absolutely devastating. As urban areas grow larger and more developed, there will be fewer and fewer places in Burien that will offer such vast and uninterrupted native habitat. Though most of the urban areas of Western Washington have been thoroughly logged and developed since the early 1900s, it is groves of old growth left and patches of second growth that were allowed to regrow that make Burien and surrounding cities such a magical place to live. For those reasons, I urge the Burien City Council to seek and secure grant funding to purchase this plot of land and preserve it for future generations. I believe that the continued existence, protection, and preservation of Seahurst Park in its entirety should be considered as valuable as economic health and stability of Burien as a city. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Mark Hayden.
Good evening. I'm Mark Hayden, a longtime Burien resident, and I currently work in the city. Some of you here today know me from the community and from the work that I do. I've been in this city for over 25 years and have built relationships with a lot of you. I stand on my integrity, my morals, and my ethics to provide this community with a trusted partner, advisor, and friend while navigating the myriad of issues surrounding our city. I've never come before the council to speak, but this time, my time has come for me to have my 2 minutes as a citizen, as a taxpayer. The city manager has openly stated he no longer trusts Chief Ted Boe and seeks the removal from the Burien Police Department. This is supported by the mayor and the council. Over the last several weeks, public statements have been filled with false narratives, lies, and manipulations of the truth. These statements have been made with complete disregard for all who may be impacted. It has been done at the expense of a good man's reputation. Chief Ted Boe has been openly and unfairly criticized and blamed for the shortcomings of the city and its leaders. This is a man who has served this community for 6 years. There are no qualifying statements as to why he is now distrusted among council members and the city manager, demanding his removal as chief of police. I'm here to state that if you do not trust Chief Ted Boe, then you do not trust me or the other brave men and women that work here in this city. The chief is a leader and is the compass for all the work your officers do and what your officers have built in this community. I could not sit back and let one man be insulted, demeaned, and vilified for issues that are clearly failures by the city government for the last several years. The chief is a scapegoat for the city manager and this council, and let it be known I am here at no one's direction. Chief Boe had no knowledge of me coming to speak to you. I am here to do what is right, and I stand in front of you to openly state I have no confidence in the city manager or this council, and I am not alone. Finally, instead of pointing fingers and placing blame on a man who has done nothing but support this community and who has attempted to work with all of you, it is time to look in the mirror and truly evaluate your personal performance and your moral compass.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Next is Henry McLaughlin.
I'm here representing only myself and not here at the direction of anyone. In 25+ years of worked and served in the city, I've watched as council members, mayors, city managers, and police chiefs have come and gone. Some good, not so good. Interesting fact about police chiefs. They are required to swear an oath to protect and follow the Constitution of both the United States, State of Washington, the Revised Code of Washington, King County Municipal Codes as defined by the courts. Not an easy task with the challenges we face today. I've had the privilege of watching Chief Boe grow from patrol officer to police chief, and he has never wavered from that oath. He has led from the front and holds everyone, including himself, to an incredibly high standard, all the while weighing legal standing and legal authority on the direction he provides. He is a champion of accountability and protecting all people's civil rights while being proactive and innovative in this approach. Yet this body, through proclamation or standing silent, has challenged his trust, his honesty, and his credibility. In response to that petition. We, the officers of the Police Department of Burien, write to you today to express our extreme disappointment with a recent decision of the city to request the removal of Chief Ted Boe as the chief. The chief has been the chief of the majority of the last decade and has done nothing but improve the work site in your city. In addition to significant drops in crime and increases in proactive activity, Ted has put the Burien on the city map as a premier agency for the mental health alternatives with police interaction and with our neighbors that are in crisis. He is motivated and developed his officer to the extent that prior to this decision, Burien had the highest ratio of officers attempting to get into your contract and leave the county. This action will result in the immediate transfer request of countless years of experience from the city to more supportive organizations within the county. On top of this, nobody except the least senior deputies and sergeants will be forced to work in a place that does not support constitutional policing, which historically results in lower proactivities. For this reason, this letter serves as an express vote of no confidence in manager or mayor.
Please, thank you.
Shame on you.
Please, no applause.
Next is Matthew Mose.
Good evening, Council. I'm Matthew Mose, the president of Kennedy Catholic High School. I'm here tonight to urge you to reject the recommendations of the staff regarding the zoning code amendments and to adopt the recommendations from your appointed Citizen Planning Commission that they passed on February 28th. The Planning Commission took a planned, thoughtful approach, researched options that have been used in other municipalities, and discussed thoroughly options that incorporated the concerns of those most immediately affected by the proposed changes. I remain frustrated and disappointed by the approach the city has taken to engage the public on this issue. The agenda item tonight has been moved multiple times and the staff recommendations were not made public until Friday. While technically legal, this approach does not rebuild the trust you promised would be prioritized. While the Planning Commission's recommendations may require the council to revisit its November decision on the placement of a temporary pallet home community, I ask you to respect the commission's process, which included public hearings, and reject the staff's attempt to significantly alter their work. Thank you.
Next is Ness.
Good evening, Council. My name is Ness. I am a business owner here in Burien, cooperative, worker-owned outdoor preschool, the only outdoor preschool that serves the South Sound currently. I have been raising this community's children for over 4 years in Seahurst Park. This land that is currently up for sale in Seahurst is unceded Duwamish territory and is sacred and special to all who frequent it. This area is known as the Lollipop, and many teachers and kids have worked on this area to provide trails and to better take care of the land. It has not gone unnoticed that this land acquisition is happening in South Seattle. Many creatures call this place home, our kids, the slugs, the plants. This particular place that is up for sale is eagle territory where they are currently nesting and raising their young. And it just makes me wonder if any of the council members had ever walked those trails truly presently, you would not be able to morally destroy this land. It sinks into your heart and it becomes a part of you. And if you all truly support small business owners and the initiatives to help save the climate and forest canopy in Burien, then you would do everything in your power to acquire grants to help save Seahurst.
Thank you. Next is Andrea Morella.
Good evening. My name is Andrea Marilla. I'm a Kennedy Catholic High School parent, and my husband owns a business in Burien. I wasn't even comfortable coming into this building this evening. I typically avoid situations that I see as a possible threat. But this topic I hold dear and wouldn't dream of missing the opportunity for my voice to be heard. I feel as those of us trying to live a civilized life, working, raising kids, caring for the elderly, or enjoying retirement are being punished. We're enabling those with addiction problems. And for the record, I do have firsthand experience with the issue. I have a close family member who battles addiction and mental health issues. And guess what? He has a roof over his head and he still continues to use drugs and he doesn't seek help for his mental health. I thought progress was going to be made with the new Burien City Council with their attempts to try and clean things up around here. I have defended some of you in deep conversations with friends and acquaintances. I told them that you were trying and being blocked at your attempts. When I heard the suggestion that put the Seattle City Light property back on the table, I was floored. How can you honestly think that there should be no separation requirements from where the transitional housing is placed or how many can be operating at a given time? We've been told that the tiny homes are high barrier. There is to be no drugs use or mentally ill individuals allowed. We have heard nothing on how this will be enforced. If these restrictions are in fact true, it doesn't appear the individuals occupying downtown Burien would even qualify. I presume it will be up and running and then the barriers will be lowered. I don't trust the project one bit, and I'm quite angry that you would want to place it next to a school or possible future locations with children. From my conversations with business owners in downtown Burien, the amount of open drug use, drug dealers, property damage, and prostitution in motorhomes is appalling. I do not want this near my children or anyone's children. Furthermore, the homeowners shouldn't have to endure this burden. I don't blame anyone for not wanting this in their backyard. As I've mentioned before, you have a duty to the rest of your citizens. You have a duty to protect our youth and those just trying to live an honest, hardworking life. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Angela.
Hi, my name is Angela, and I've worked as an outdoor preschool teacher for the past 4 years at Seahurst Park and co-founded an outdoor preschool there. I'm urging the council to please pursue any grant funding that would allow the city to acquire the privately owned parcel of land that is up for development and make it an official part of Seahurst Park. Any development to these woods would be devastating to the ecosystem and all the plants, animals, and communities that call the creek and forest home. I, along with my co-teachers, are out there in the park 5 days a week the whole year round with our preschoolers and have spent time all throughout the park. We are so lucky to be able to hike, play, build community, and learn about the land together through all the changing weather and seasons every single day. I know firsthand how many young people feel deeply connected to this special place. These preschoolers can tell you which plants and berries are edible, which plants might sting you, which plants will help your sting heal. They'll also show you the best trees to climb and the creek where you can witness the salmon swimming upstream in the fall to spawn, along with so much more. They have a deep, deep connection to this place. I hope the council will honor the importance of public parks and environmental connection by acquiring this privately owned parcel and making it accessible to all. We are guests on this land that the Duwamish people have stewarded since time immemorial. We must honor their unwavering care for this land by keeping this forest intact and preventing any development from happening. Please find a way to acquire this parcel of land. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Wendy Bootserin.
Good evening, council members. It is so good to look around this room and see so many people exercising their First Amendment rights and engaged in the community. Many Kennedy parents, including myself, are concerned about the possibility of rezoning the lot adjacent to Kennedy for transitional housing. We do not want a tiny homes village for the homeless located so close to our children. Homeless people do need help and compassion. However, it's just not safe to have them living near a school until they get the services they need. Right now, Burien has a real crisis with homeless people camping downtown. 4 homeless men died due to drug overdose in just less than 2 months. Residents and business owners have reported crime related to public camping. Why is this allowed to happen? King County has restricted the Burien police from enforcing the public camping ordinance. The result is lawlessness. The Tiny Homes Village proposal passed by the Burien City Council and funded by King County includes a motion about the code of conduct. Residents cannot have drugs, alcohol, or firearms, and there must be no sex offender history. Can Kennedy's parents and neighbors trust that King County will allow these rules to be enforced? Or are we simply moving the homeless crisis down the road next door to a high school?
Thank you. Next is Lemon Bird.
Good evening. My name is Lemon and I am a former resident of Burien. I got outpriced in my rental unit last year and now live in North Seattle. And I am a current volunteer of one of the outdoor preschools for Seahurst Park. I'd like to start with an acknowledgement that we don't live on Coast Salish land because Coast Salish isn't actually a term that exists. It was a term created by white people to generalize the natives and indigenous folks that lived up here. We live on Duwamish land. As you know, South Seattle is home to a lot of people of color. It is home to a lot of beautiful nature, and it is just generally a really great place to live. I really miss living in Burien, and when I heard that Seahurst, or not Seahurst had been bought, but a parcel had been bought next to Seahurst, I was quite devastated. I really, really love Seahurst Park, and I think that that old growth that is sustaining the future generations of trees and help keeping out some of those things that Green Burien had discussed earlier is super important, and we really need to prioritize getting grants and getting funding going towards those services. I am also a registered nurse who works with formerly unhoused folks. I work with a permanent supportive housing organization, and we take in people who, you know, have had all sorts of issues, and we provide them with a place to live and the support to do it. I agree with people's opinions that homeless folks need support, and they need support even once they're housed. I think that we need to encourage the development of a tiny home village because people need places to live. We need to get these people off the streets so that they can prioritize their health care and prioritize those mental health issues that they can't take care of literally at all because they don't even know where they're going to be living for the night. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Jean Olson on Zoom. However, I do not see Jean. So we'll move on to Melina Call.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. In February, the Planning Commissioners held a public hearing regarding rezoning the city light lot next to Kennedy. City planners used the proposed rezoning of this one site to push for citywide code changes. Their goal was to increase transitional housing throughout single-family neighborhoods in Burien. The decision around rezoning the city light lot needs to be considered first, and it needs to be a separate issue from code changes that will affect residential neighborhoods throughout Burien. I am grateful for the guidelines on transitional housing the Planning Commissioners recommended, such as a 2-acre maximum lot size and a 1,000-foot barrier between transitional housing and schools. Unfortunately, despite overwhelming public comments supporting these public safety changes, the Burien City staff wants to remove these safety limits on neighborhood transitional housing. Burien council members, I ask you not to allow the rezoning of the site next to Kennedy and to take your time before considering citywide zoning changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Dion Palermo.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. My name is Dion Palermo. I live in Renton and I do have children that attend Kennedy Catholic High School. I've attended 2 of the Planning Commission meetings related to amending the zoning requirements to allow for transitional housing developments in Burien. Despite differing viewpoints, one common theme I did hear was concern for the challenges faced by those who are unhoused, many of whom do have mental health and addiction issues. However, for a variety of reasons, there were many commenters who did take issue, had concerns, or didn't support the approach being taken by the council. It appears that the council is moving forward with a plan that's lacking definition for the specific location for this transitional housing without meaningful partnership with the affected stakeholders. The council does not have answers to many of the questions or mitigations for the safety and security concerns raised by folks. And while the Planning Commission attempted to address these safety and security considerations and concerns raised by commenters, the key provisions that they have added to the zoning amendments were removed by city staff because those provisions would eliminate the Seattle City Light site from consideration. I do feel it is responsible to move forward with a site that is located next to schools, playgrounds, daycares, etc. And also to move forward with a plan that is lacking a definition and does not appropriately address all of the stakeholder concerns that have been raised. While we all agree this is a challenging issue that does need to be addressed in a compassionate way, your solution should not be at the expense of the safety and security of the residents or children. So
Thank
I
you.
do ask you to please reconsider.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Joelle Briggs.
Good evening. My name is Joelle Briggs, and I'm a Seattle resident and a Kennedy Catholic parent. You face a difficult issue in considering the transitional housing zoning, and the planning question should be what parameters need to be in place to provide the best opportunity for success of a transitional housing program while also protecting city residents, children, and businesses. The Planning Commission took active steps to do just that after listening to all stakeholders at public meetings. They appropriately responded with the zoning code amendment revisions to address concerns while leaving open avenues to allow transitional housing. However, I am greatly concerned with the city staff recommendations. They do not address the community concerns and are instead singly focused on using the Seattle City Light property regardless of the impact to Burien. Their recommendation allows for transitional housing to have no separation from schools and playgrounds. It does not provide for a maximum lot size. It doubles the number of residents permitted, and it places no limits on the numbers of transitional housing developments in Burien. These short-sighted recommendations do not build a zoning infrastructure to ensure long-term success of the program and is potentially detrimental to Burien's residents and children. I strongly encourage this council to focus on setting the city and this program up for success and not accept the city staff recommendations, but do accept the Planning Commission recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Christina Reiser.
Good evening. I just want to say that there's no doubt that there is a problem with homelessness, and I would like it to be done right so that it doesn't jeopardize our youth and our community. I feel like housing 100 people, but at the expense of thousands of people, is a real unethical issue. We need to protect our youth. We work every day to do that. I'm middle class, and so I just would like you to reconsider and make the zoning right, not just do whatever you can to get them on the property by Kennedy. Please don't go back on the zoning that we so thoughtfully planned out back in February. We all worked really hard at giving that advice, and I don't agree with the city's changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Charlotte Stafschult.
I am Charlotte Stafschult. I'm a parent of a homeless person and an addict. And I'm up here basically for another death of one of ours. I'm kind of behind the scenes and not seen, and I'm good with that. I help wherever I can. I give whatever I can. And for the ones that say, and your resources that say they are doing it, you know, they get paid for how many cases they have, not for what they do. I'm telling you, they're not the ones walking it. They're not the ones doing it. Basically, people like me. And the homeless are not the ones that are horrible people. I will clean up after them. I will be there. And I don't need the pat on the back. If you're a parent of an addict, please understand, you may not be the reason why they're out there, but you are the reason they stay. Your lack of love, that wasn't their choice to be brought into this world. You should not ever ignore them and not approve that they're not worth loving because they're not who you think they should be. A lot of people, I've met beautiful people out there that are more real than anybody that live in houses. So the resources that they say that they're out there, they're not. So they're broken promises. And I go from camp to camp to camp, from all the way to Federal Way. I walk into the camps and I see what people need. There's nobody out there trying to help them. So they are a lost cause because they won't do it alone. They don't know how to. And it's not acceptable everywhere. So I just wish you guys would just judge less talk less and do more, because it's not happening. I'm the one out there every day and I don't have a job. Somehow it works out. Maybe my heart's in the right place, so it works out, but I don't have a job either. But my job has care of many more than just one kid now. And I'm proud to say that.
Thank you. Next is Matthew Cook.
Thank you, council, for your time. My name is Matthew Cook. I am a parent of a Kennedy Catholic High student. When considering the final zoning code for transitional housing, of utmost importance should be the safety of children and young adults. The King County Regional Homeless Authority and the different service providers they work with have shown time and time again that they cannot be trusted. I think recently of Kenmore and Plymouth Housing and that situation where a complete bait and switch was done, where they told the city of Kenmore it would be a particular type of housing and it really was going to be wet housing. And that council and that mayor and those residents said enough, no, and they won. I have no trust in these service providers like Plymouth Housing, Lehigh, whoever it will be that will ultimately be running this encampment. We've seen the vetting is inconsistent at best. And again, the bait and switch tactics and what they say will be the type of housing, and it ultimately becomes something else. Think of those kids, think of their safety. I'll end with this. It was just a few years ago, there was an encampment in Ballard. I believe it was run by Lehigh. There was no vetting. They didn't check for anybody, the residents, if they had outstanding warrants, and that resulted in a rape. That's a very realistic possibility. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And with that, we have reached the end of our public comment list.
Thank you very much. We're gonna take a 10-minute break. All right, we're back. 8:30.
Present, Mayor.
Councilmember Garcia, thank you. We don't have Councilmember Moore. There she is. Okay. Well, we're moving on to the only item on the consent agenda. Do I have a motion for the consent agenda item? Councilmember Mata.
Motion for the consent agenda?
Is there a second? Moved and seconded on the consent agenda. Just before we pass this, though, just a note to, this is just one item is consent agenda, and we're all here. I was killing time until Councilmember Moore. Okay, you're good. All right, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
All right, unanimous approval of the consent agenda. Moving on to the business agenda. First item, a overview of the 2024 legislative session with our lobbyist, Lisette Cadena. Hello, Lisette.
Hello, Council. How are you?
Well, we're glad to see you. Could I say, oh, please in the chamber, please in the chamber, please in the chamber, please in the chamber. Please in the chamber. Lisette is our state lobbyist, and we are discussing overview of our legislative session. Lisette and I and the city manager had a couple meetings with our state senator from the 33rd and a state rep from the 33rd, where we discussed some current issues with them, but we'd love to do an overview for the whole council. And before we get started, just a note of praise for Lisette. Lisette, I was down at the legislative session for my day job, but also for a couple times for the city. And Lisette is pretty much widely and universally acclaimed for her relationships on the Hill, and she's a fantastic lobbyist. So just wanted to let you know and the community know that Lisette is definitely an asset for the city of Burien. So go ahead, Lisette, with your overview of the legislative session.
Thank you, Mayor, for those incredibly kind words. Good evening, Council, and my apologies for not being able to be there in person this evening. So as the Mayor mentioned, I'm just going to do a very quick overview of the rapid 60-day legislative session that just ended close to almost 2 months ago. As I said, it was a 60-day session. The legislature was in the second year of the biennium, and they had many bills that were introduced for this year, as well as the bills that were still alive from the 2023 session. With all of that flurry of bills and policy ideas to consider, this year is an election year. And I say that because an election year really colors the policies that the legislature decides to take up. It colors the bills that move forward. It really sets the tone of the legislative session. And with an election year, we have the whole entire House of Representatives, as well as half the Senate up for either re-election or new faces coming in. And one interesting thing of note that happens towards the end of a 60-day session in an election year is we have a lot of retirements. And this year we had several key notable retirements in the Senate. The Senate will have a new majority leader since Senator Andy Billig from Spokane has decided to step down. And with a lot of these retirements in the Senate, we have a lot of House members looking to move from the House of Representatives to the Senate. So there are a lot of rearranging of the deck chairs that is taking place, more so this year with a number of folks retiring, not seeking re-election due to being redistricted out of their district, or they are running for a higher office. We have several folks that are running for public lands, insurance commissioner, and the attorney general. So needless to say, I would say August and November are going to be very interesting and really will tell what the legislature is going to look like for the 2025 session. So going back to this year, it was a supplemental year, which typically means the legislature makes minor adjustments to all three budgets. And what do I mean by all three budgets? I'm talking about the operating budget, the capital budget, and the transportation budget. in the past couple of years, I would say probably since COVID, in a supplemental year, the legislature has essentially almost written a new budget, and hasn't stuck to just making tweaks to their budget. And that has been due to larger than anticipated state revenues, the huge influx of federal funding that the state received. But this year, it was, level playing field for revenue on the state side, and we didn't have a huge influx of federal resources. So really, the legislature stuck to just making those minor adjustments to those three budgets and passing some policy bills that they thought they needed to move that budget forward. One thing that not a lot of us anticipated or have seen is there were 6 initiatives presented to the legislature. And when there are initiatives presented to the legislature has 3 options before them. One of them is to make adjustments to those initiatives. And if they make adjustments, then those adjustments and the original proposal would have to be offered on the November ballot to the voters. The second one is essentially to pass the initiatives as is. And the third one is, for lack of better terms, to ignore it and to just let them go to the November ballot. The legislature decided to adopt 3 initiatives, therefore leaving 3 that will go to the November ballot that the voters will decide on how to move forward. So the 3 initiatives that the legislature adopted were Initiative 2111, which was limiting the ability of state and local governments to impose an income tax. The second one was Initiative 2081, which is deemed the Parental Bill of Rights and really deals with the information that is that parents can seek from their children's school. The third one is Initiative 2113, which removed most of the restrictions on police pursuits. Those 3 were adopted by this legislature and so go into effect June 6th. The other 3 initiatives that are will be on the ballot are Initiative 2117, which would repeal the Climate Commitment Act, and that is Washington State's Cap and Invest program. And that program, all 3 budgets receive a certain allocation of funding for those. So if that if that initiative were to pass and repeal the Cap and Invest program, we anticipate that it would have substantial impact to the 3 budgets. And so the legislature would have to decide whether they make changes in programs that they fund in order to continue those programs that were traditionally funded with the Climate Commitment Act, or they let those program lapse. But of course, we won't know the trajectory of that until November. The second initiative that voters would get to decide on is Initiative 2109, and it's repealing the capital gains tax. This tax will also have immense implications on the operating budget because a lot of the dollars for this tax go to fund early learning, childcare, and school education. So you can see that with the lack of those dollars, there are some huge impacts to the operating budget that the legislature may or may not have to contend with. And of course, we won't know until November. And then the third one is creating an opt-out option for Washington's long-term care retirement program. So we'll know the outcome in November of those that will really determine our legislative session and how they decide and how the legislature decides to move next year. So transitioning into some important bills that Burien really was monitoring and playing a key role in. One of those that I would like to highlight because it was very interesting to watch. Last year, the legislature really deemed it the session of housing. And so a lot of advocates and stakeholders were looking at this year as like, maybe the legislature will continue and make some larger policy choices in affordable housing in general. There wasn't a lot of that, but there were some key bills that did pass. And one of them was House Bill 1998, which allows for co-living housing. And you're probably saying, well, what is co-living housing? And what does it require? So it essentially requires cities to allow co-living housing, which may look like, a separate bedroom, but with a shared laundry, bathroom, kitchenette. Those sort of living situations. So now there's a requirement that cities must allow for this type of housing as a way to allow folks to stay and live within the community. The next one is Senate Bill 6175. This was allowing for a sales and use tax deferral when you are converting commercial properties into affordable housing. And so it would authorize a sales tax deferral if a certain percentage of that project, of that conversion, I should say, is dedicated to affordable housing. I think this was a huge policy that a lot of folks were pushing, as we have seen a lot of downtown areas, not just in Seattle and other larger cities, not have the huge resurgence of folks going back to work there. What do we do with that empty commercial property? I think there are still a lot of conversations taking place about the implementation, whether the feasibility is there to actually transform or convert some of those buildings into residential remains to be seen, and will be interesting to monitor the implementation of that bill. One other bill of note that Burien has been supporting and has been really involved in, as well as the Association of Washington Cities, is revising the 1% property tax cap. This has been on our legislative agenda since I can remember, and AWC, Association of Washington Cities, as well as multiple other cities, have really been asking the legislature to lift the 1% property tax cap, because it limits the revenue and resources you have available to do the basic business of a city government. And as your costs have increased due to inflation and the pandemic, there aren't enough resources available for you to move forward with funding basic services. Unfortunately, this bill did not move forward, even though it felt like we had a lot of support for this bill. It met with election year politics and with a little bit of a hesitancy from the majority to really put forward as what some folks would have been able to categorize as a sales tax, as a property tax increase. Another bill that that Burien had been monitoring that for the past couple of years that did not move forward, but we anticipate will come back in some shape or form, is allowing for transit-oriented development. And what that means is in areas where you have high transit corridors, the H line, for example, or you have a light rail station, you can develop and allow for density near those areas to further facilitate the ease and the movement of folks in your community. That also ran up against the time clock of a 60-day session. And so we anticipate that that will be something that we will be working on next year. There is a bit of good news on a new grant program. Some legislators and advocates have been really pushing for the creation and the ability to have more extreme weather shelters. And so their House Bill 1012 creates a new grant program to provide the resources and help to stand up extreme weather shelters in times of like extreme heat and extreme cold. And this was really a driving force from the main sponsor of the impacts that a lot of our communities were dealing with when we had that huge spike in high heat and a lot of people didn't know where to go to seek refuge. One other nuance that I think will really have, it sounds more complicated than it is, and it's House Bill 1105, which is changing the notice requirements for public comment. And this is only for when you have a set number of days. So like if you, because of a statutory time frame, you can only have 30 days for public comment. This bill is saying, okay, you must specify when that 30th day is, whether it lands on a day of the week, the month, and the day. So nobody feels like they do not know when the 30th day window time frame ends, and people can actually feel like they know a set time frame by when they have to provide notice. Now, looking a little bit forward to 2025, going back to what I was saying is we have lots of changes coming ahead. We're going to have a new governor, which means new agency leadership, new legislators, new leadership amongst the four caucuses in the legislature. And then we're going into a full budget cycle with major implications of not knowing where the initiatives are going to land and whether they're going to pass or fail. And so everybody's just waiting with bated breath to see what November brings. But even though it is an election year, legislators are always looking forward to engaging with cities, with their constituency, and we have had really good conversations with the legislators that we have met with. So I would be more than happy to arrange those for council members that want to do that. And also happy to answer any questions since I ran through some pretty lengthy, detailed information.
Thank you, Lisette. Any questions for Lisette at first here? Go ahead, Councilmember Ake. Go ahead.
Lisette, thank you so much for all of this wonderful information and the work that you did for the city. My question actually goes back to last year. So I have a question regarding Senate Bill 5536, colloquially known as the Blake Fix, for arresting for open drug use and providing the opportunity for either staying in jail or accepting diversion treatment services. There was $44 million that was signed into that law by Governor Inslee back in July. I was wondering, I have a few questions. Can I just state them all together? I think you might have been
Yes.
given a list of them, but I want to get them on record. Can you provide a status of the distribution of the funds? Are any of the funds for cities or counties used through a grant program? Has King County received any funding? Are there any treatment facilities receiving money for these services? Do you have any other information about the implementation of the Blake Fix law that impacts Burien and/or King County?
Thank you for those questions. I have sent them out to other folks who follow this. And it's so I'm hoping to get more specific information to really dive into the details that you've asked for. So within the next week, I hope to have an answer to your questions.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Lisette? Lisette, what is the timeline for us developing our 25 legislative priorities?
It's really up to you. The council gets to sort of decide. I usually like to operate in the time frame of, having something set October, November, a little bit earlier. That allows us to have and allows the council to have more lead time when they want to meet with legislators to present the legislative agenda. This year is a little bit tricky because we won't know who will be in certain positions until after the election. So we have a little bit more bandwidth to play with in regards to the formulation of the legislative agenda, and then really hit the ground running in December with meeting new legislators if there are new legislators in our legislative districts.
Okay. Thank you. I think that timeline makes sense for us too. Any other questions for Lisette? Okay, Lisette, thank you very much. Can't wait to see you soon.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to agenda item B, discussion of Planning Commission recommendation related to transitional housing zoning code amendment. Is that Adolfo? Are you doing a little pre-thing for us?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Thank you, Council. We will introduce the topic and speak to Council about the memo and the materials that are included in this particular agenda item. We do have Liz here also trying to getting caught up to speed on everything that Council has been doing since November of last year and since pretty much beginning of last year. We also have Jeff Watson, our former interim director of community development online. If there are any specific technical questions that council would like to ask. In your packets, you have 4 specific documents. One is a memo that was created by staff that work with the Planning Commission. In that document, they attempt to really share progressive information as it's become available. The second document is the recommendation that was initially provided to the Planning Commission for them to review. It was created wholly by staff based on its research and its review of the RCW, and then also how it coincides with some of our region-wide goals that are established through different partnerships, and then also with our comprehensive plan. Third document in your packet is the recommendation that the Planning Commission discussed, deliberated, and then voted to recommend to council. It is based off of their deliberations, their discussions, their research, but then also as a base, the material that was presented by staff during the initial review from the Planning Commission. And lastly, we have the document that attempts to essentially merge several recommendations, one from staff and then also one from the Planning Commission. The reason for that, and I should share with council, is that staff had been placed in a position by council last year in November, working towards a particular location, directing us to do something, and staff being placed in that position had to honor what the previous council had directed us to do. So in that mentality, we worked on the document attachment 4 to share with council, because we have to follow the directive from the council until it changes. So that is the reason why you have attachment 4 and what the reason for the recommendations that have been made.
Great, thank you very much. I'd like to set the conversation here just for a couple things that I've been thinking about over the weekend that I think we should be seriously considering when we have this conversation. The first is that I want to have everyone keep in mind that we're really setting the stage for what we want Burien to utilize our zoning and planning for this type of housing leading into the future. This is a conversation around what this is going to look like from now until 2050, not just for one specific project. So that's important to keep in mind. This is about what we're thinking about, how Burien utilizes its land and our planning as a city for transitional housing as a whole. So with that, also, I wanted to say something about the course of events that happened last year, is that this was essentially just a reminder about the project itself, the $1 million in tiny homes. This was not something that was provided to us with flexibility in mind. Every opportunity the county government had to remind us that it was $1 million in 35 pallet homes for a location we had to choose, that was thrown at us at every step of the way. And a reminder that that even goes against our own planning procedures. It was not done in line with what the city government has done forever for planning. And so now what we have the ability to do here is amend that ridiculous process that happened last year from the county, which was just entirely political on their end, to utilize our ability as a council to say, we are going through the proper process. We are making decisions about planning. We are making decisions about zoning. We are making decisions about the future of land use in the city of Burien, not just for this one singular project, which was not organically decided by our planning commission or our city council, but was something that was shoved to us by the county without any flexibility. So we have an opportunity here to reverse the process, start the way we should have started at the very beginning, but we're unable to because the county continued to say, you have to pick a place, you have to pick a place, you have to have a random arbitrary council vote to choose that place, and did not happen in accordance with our rules of order or our procedures as a government. So we have the opportunity now to go at our pace, to have a civil and thoughtful discussion about the use of land in the city of Burien for the future. Because it is a mandated expectation that we plan for the use of a certain number of transitional housing units. So that's all I wanted to say before we dive into the conversation and discuss this, but just a reminder that this is something we are mandated to do, just to decide and think about how we utilize land and planning and zoning for this in the city. So that's all I wanted to say about that as we move into this conversation. Councilmember Moore.
Thank you. I move to place the staff recommended option on the consent agenda for the next regular scheduled meeting.
Is there a second?
Seconded. Seconded.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Just a reminder, we are able to amend any motion, so this is a conversation to have. And folks can offer amendments, they can offer changes, but let's make sure we keep this conversation open and grounded in the idea that we should figure out as a council what works for not only all of us, but for the whole community. So you are able to amend, you were able to offer motions and amendments. So Councilmember Moore, would you like to speak to your motion?
Speak to my
Yes,
motion
please.
because I understand that it doesn't meet all of the things everybody wants. Ultimately, we do have to pick a space. Ultimately, we do have to have a location. I'm baffled and frustrated at the ongoing narrative that somehow lives can be saved by making people leave when there is no viable place for them to go. We saw that for all its flaws, which I acknowledge, there were no lives lost during the time people were staying at the Oasis Church. I believe that the stability, though temporary, improved the well-being of those who were there, and that we saw a decline when it closed. Tonight we have a chance, and this could be a final chance to offer some temporary stability on our terms with our stipulations, which I would open people to amend, in a tiny home village, to offer a place to go while we wait for DESC to come online, while we wait for the RFPs to be issued and filled. This provides a temporary, negotiable option.
Thank you. I have a question for the city manager first. So just to remind folks about timeline here, once we determine our decision on planning for this as a city as a whole, as I've seen in communications, the RFP from KCRHA goes live for them to then determine, based off of however we determine to utilize planning and zoning for this in the city of Burien. It goes back to KCRHA to open up the RFP for a service provider that would then figure out what to do, where to do it in the city of Burien, depending on how we decide tonight on zoning and land use for this.
Yes, Mayor, in terms of timing, don't have specifics. We do know that there is a template RFP that has been created. Once the city in some way or another confirms to the Regional Homelessness Authority that, yes, it's done, the city's component or part is done, then the project really is just a KCRHA project at that point. The release of an RFP can range anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, typically not 2 weeks unless there is an urgency of some kind, but typically it would take in the range of 1 month to have an open RFP, at which point proposals are submitted, reviewed, then one is selected. So roughly about another 2 weeks after the 1 month period. And then at that point, once it's selected, then work begins to plan for the construction of something, whatever it is that it's constructed in any place.
Yeah.
So looking at a prolonged process of at least 2 months from an RFP being released to potential proposal being accepted and working with a partner.
Great. Okay. Question, comments, amendments, suggestions. Councilmember Akey.
Thank you, Mayor. For the city manager question, once and this is back to the or to the tiny home village concept with KCRHA. Once the $1 million is used up, what happens to the tiny home village?
The motion made by council last year specifically limited the lifespan of the project to the pot of money that had been made available by the county. That no additional funds from the city would be committed to this project because we just don't have the funding to commit to it.
Okay.
So the life of the project was limited to 1 year maximum, or until the $1 million is expanded, completely used. We don't know the total amount of time that a village would remain open. We do know that constructing a village, utilities being brought in are a costly venture. So we don't know the amount of time that a village would remain open,
But just a point of clarification about this decision. I want us to think about this not from the one project, right? Because whatever we decide tonight, any transitional housing in the city of Burien would have to conform to it.
I understand. I just want to make sure I understand on this piece of it, because this could be an RFP that is put out by KCRHA. So the other piece of that is, if I remember correctly, and of course I was not on council at this time, council requested that any RFP include that this is high barrier only and no one in this property could be using drugs. Is that correct?
yes, Councilmember, the entirety of the motion made by council was shared with Regional Homelessness Authority. It is not common for this type of motion to be included entirely into an RFP, but the Regional Homelessness Authority did confirm, once we provided them with the motion, that the entirety of the motion would be included into the RFP.
Okay, so now I want to move away from that. So this, these recommendations, first I thank the mayor for making the clarification that there's a Washington state law that says that we need to do this and we need to set this in place. And I think that it's important that we recognize our duty to avoid any lawsuits that could happen if we don't have something in place. So I want to make sure that I'm recognizing that we need to have a zoning code for transitional housing in this community, and that we need to, determine what's going to be the best to have that in place. I appreciate all of the work that the Planning Commission did and everybody in the community who came to speak and share their thoughts and ideas during this particular process, because I know that a lot went into it, and I went through all of the Planning Commission meetings online as well, for the ones that I couldn't attend. So I recognize all of the work that was done, and I appreciate all of that work. And at the same time, we can't be creating a policy just for one concept plan. We need to be able to do it for the future and for what we want to be able to do as a community and how that's going to look. So I thank staff for recognizing the areas that we need to be able to do in order to meet state law and those requirements for state law. So I think that that's important. So that's my comments.
Thank you. Councilmember Mata?
I'd like to make an amendment where it states maximum residential capacity of 60 individuals for transitional housing development. I'd like to X 60 and say 30. So the new amendment would be maximum residential capacity of 30 individuals for transitional housing development.
Can we get that on the screen, please?
Second.
Been moved and seconded for the amendment. Hold on, we'll wait for they put it on the screen.
I'm sorry, and who seconded?
Seconded by Deputy Mayor Moore.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any comments on the amendment?
I'd like to speak on it.
Go ahead.
I understand the fear that there is regarding the situation we find ourselves in downtown. And I think what I've heard today from residents, it's really a divided issue. I mean, it's divided our community. In fact, today I was heartbroken to see the division amongst the police officers that, regulate our community, but also understand where our city manager is at, as he is the chief officer of the city. I hope that cooler heads will prevail and that we can move forward. But I also think that, one of the motions that I made at the time that I supported this is that we do need places where people can lay their head down. And I do believe that individuals that are coming out of detox, that are coming out, what we've asked the society for them to do, that they have a place, they should have a place to go rest their head on, and we should be able to have open beds for other individuals. I think 60 is a big number. I think 30 is manageable, with given the resources of $1 million that the county has said they're gonna help the city with. But that's all there is. There's only $1 million. I know that we're gonna have to go into our own coffers as with the deficit that we have to be able to figure out where we find the money. Bringing in utilities, bringing in a functioning place is gonna be difficult. But I also know that I don't wanna see what I see out here on the streets. Now, when the US Supreme Court, when the judges decide, or the judge decides, what the direction that we're gonna take as a country, as a city, as a state and a county, then obviously that's the direction we'll take. But I don't believe that what we see on the streets is acceptable. I do believe that we should have some providers with being able to talk about treatment. I'm a broken record, but I've had a lot of thought about this. Losing a father to drug addiction is a very difficult situation. I don't think I've healed from that. But I also remember that if my father could not make the step of going into some kind of detox or some kind of a process other than going to jail, I always wondered why he couldn't really take a different direction, knowing that he has a son and my sisters that love him and his mother. But it's a drug. It's a drug that really does cause psychological changes. And I do believe that some of the rules that were put in place around the school, I do believe that it's going to help some individuals that want a second chance. I have seen other individuals who have taken that step for whatever reason it is. We just never know what makes a person turn their life around. It could be a conversation with their mother, or maybe their son, or maybe their uncle, or maybe just a random person where they say, hey, I've had about enough of it. But I do believe that people that are coming out of detox, we don't have enough beds for people that want to take that step to be able to get detox. And so do believe if we can have some beds here in the city where we have individuals that want that second chance, that gone through the process of detoxing, I can't say no to that. So thank you.
Any other comments on the proposed amendment? All those in favor of the proposed amendment, please raise your hand or say aye. That is Councilmember Ake, Deputy Mayor Mora, Mayor Schilling, Councilmember Mata. All those opposed to the proposed amendment? Councilmember Andrade.
Opposed.
Councilmembers Moore and Garcia. So that amendment passes 4-3. Okay, any other amendments? Deputy Mayor Mora?
I wanted to amend the portion to add transitional housing cannot be located within 1,000 feet of an elementary school, secondary school, playground, recreation center, facility, childcare, park, or library.
Is there a second?
I just like clarification. So what would it be to? 0? Or just, I just didn't hear that motion. I don't think it was clear to me.
Sorry, no, transitional housing cannot be located within 1,000 feet of any of those locations.
Within 1,000 feet. Is there a second? Seeing no second, that amendment is not added. Are there any other amendments? Can we have it back up on the screen, please? And is there a way actually to bring the whole recommendation up on the screen side by side with the motion? So like have the staff recommendation on the left side of the screen.
City Manager, which attachment was that? Which attachment? Is it an attachment to the agenda bill that you're asking for, Mayor?
That would be attachment 4.
Thank you.
Yeah, just so we can see the whole recommendation. so that we can see where.
Sorry, I'm not sure where,
The staff recommendation.
this is attachment 4.
The highway areas, it's a little bit up, further up.
Yeah, this section, please. Okay, so right now, council, because everyone's being really quiet, and I'd like us to figure out how to work together on this. The only thing that's been amended and changed is 60 to 30. Would everyone like to go through these side by side? We'll go one by one. Let's do it. I'm gonna just lead us through it. So the second section of the staff recommendation versus the planning recommendation is screening required in the form of landscaping or a 6-foot-high view obscuring fence or wall. Are there any concerns or questions about that?
Just a
Councilmember Ake.
clarification, if you go up above, just one more of this, there is the minimum half-acre lot size, which is slightly different from the Planning Commission recommendation of the maximum 2-acre lot size. So that was just above that space.
Right, okay, thank you. So let's start there. The staff recommendation, which right now is on the table, is minimum half-acre lot size for transitional housing, and the planning commission's maximum 2-acre lot size. Is there any amendment or concern? Right now, it's minimum half-acre and no maximum set. Is there any concern? Councilmember, Deputy Mayor Mora.
Yes, I was actually hoping to change that from a minimum 1-acre lot size with a maximum of 2 acre.
So you're motioning to utilize the planning commission's recommendation for that one.
No, it would be 1-acre lot size minimum and 2-acre maximum.
got it.
So it's different than Boe.
Would you like to make that a motion?
Yes, I would like to motion to amend it to say minimum lot size 1-acre, maximum lot size 2-acre.
Is there a second? Okay, motioned and seconded, motioned by Deputy Mayor Mora and seconded by Councilmember Andrade to have the first section here be minimum 1-acre lot size, maximum 2-acre lot size. Any comments on that? Okay, then we'll take a vote on that. Can we see the amendment, please? Okay, all those in favor of this amendment, please raise your hand or say aye. In favor, Councilmember Ake, Deputy Mayor Mora, Mayor Schilling, Councilmember Andrade. All those opposed? Councilmember Moore, Councilmember Garcia. Those abstaining? Councilmember Mata. So that amendment is included into the main motion. Can we please go back to that chart? All right, scrolling down. Screening required in the form of landscaping or a 6-foot-high view obscuring fence or wall. Are there any amendments or interest in changing that? No, I'm okay with that too. Anybody have an issue? Okay, moving on. Transitional housing shall be located within half a mile of a transit stop. That's the same in both. This one is the no separation requirements from specific land uses section, where the planning commission's recommendation was transitional housing cannot be located within 1,000 feet of an elementary school or secondary school, playground, recreation center or facility, childcare center or public park. So Deputy Mayor Mora's amendment suggestion to that was the planning commission's recommendation. That did not get a second. Are there any other amendments?
Sorry, I wanted to clarify. My recommendation was the planning commission with also adding a library.
Oh, you added a library there. Okay. Are there any other amendments to this section? So the staff recommendation is no separation requirements from specific land uses. Okay. Next section, no difference. Next section, staff recommendation is no specific maximum number of transitional housing developments citywide. Planning Commission's recommendation is no more than one transitional housing development shall be permitted and operating at any one time. Any amendments or suggestions on that section? The only thing that I'm thinking about in this one is the larger need we're required to have planning and zone for transitional housing. I believe in the agenda packet, it's and in our county wide planning requirements, the city of Burien needs to have the ability to plan for somewhere like 1,100 emergency housing units of this type of transitional housing units.
That's right, Mayor, I believe it's 1433.
Yeah, okay, 1,400. And so any questions on this section? Okay, moving on down. Okay, so can we see the whole motion all together? All right, so the motion is to place the staff recommended option on the consent agenda of the next regular meeting with the following language revisions. Maximum residential capacity of 30 individuals for transitional housing developments, minimum lot size of 1 acre and maximum of 2 acres. Are there any final amendments or recommendations for this motion? Councilmember Ake.
I just have a question, Mayor. Can we add into this any of these requirements on high barrier? Or is that something that just comes in the RFPs?
If there's anything you want to add that's different from what the former council motioned for, you can. But the former council motion
Acknowledge that.
already put in place a lot of stuff. So if there's something different, you can bring that up.
Okay, I don't have anything different from that.
Okay. Any other amendments or questions or clarifications for this? Seeing none? All those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye. Councilmember Ake, Mayor Schilling, Councilmember Mata, Councilmember Moore, Councilmember Andrade.
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia, all those opposed, Deputy Mayor Mora. All right, thank you very much. The motion passes 6-1. Moving on to introduction to resolution number 506, adjustments to community development permit fees. Eric, hello. You've been here.
I just want to introduce two individuals that need no introduction because of their regular visits to council and the information that they have shared. We had Matt Hobbs from our FCS consultant group, who's been a great mentoring guide to the city throughout this process and others. And of course, we have Eric Christensen, who has been very steadfast in his work in leading his department and helping us to stay out of financial trouble. So I welcome them both to present this information to you and council.
Thank you, City Manager, Mayor, and Council. We have prepared a presentation to walk you through the 3 council action revenue items. Following the introduction of the presentation, we will focus on each revenue item separately. And for each item, we are seeking approval to place the legislation on the consent agenda for final approval. With that said, I'll hand it over to Matt.
Well, good evening, Mayor and City Council. Great to see you all again tonight. I'm going to do a recap for, I think, many of you, and then also just take my time to go through these. I know at least one council member said it takes some time to stick these stories, and they make sense the more I say them. So I'm going to keep trying to say these, and hopefully it begins to ring here. So as the city manager mentioned, my name is Matt Hobson. I work with FCS Group. I'm a senior project manager over there, and I have been working with the city's finance department over the last several years, providing a financial review of the general fund and revenue options. I'll talk about very briefly the costs for action on these revenue options, but at a high level, we presented several of these revenue options over the past several months, beginning in early 2023, dedicating one briefing for each of these 3 revenue options that we're going to talk about tonight. Next slide, please. We'll jump into a deeper dive into each of those options, but at a high level, 3 revenue options were presented to the city council for just providing information and context. The first was an increase to specific community and community development and permit fees. The second was an increase to the utility tax rate that the city assesses on public utilities who do business in the city of Burien. And the third option was increasing the business and occupation tax rate that's assessed to most businesses in the city of Burien. Next option, or next slide, please. The basis for these revenue options is founded on a long-term financial forecast of the city's general fund, comparing ongoing revenues with ongoing expenditures. I want to highlight that the purpose of the forecast was to simply look at the future expenditure requirements for existing services. We did not look at the additional cost of providing more services, basically the cost of doing business today, and how that would change in the future in response to cost inflation. What we found was that there's absent any action, there's likely a structural deficit today and in the future between revenues and expenditures of general fund. That if, without policy, you'll run into a deficit and eventually run out of cash reserves. And in response to that general fund forecast, we presented each of those 3 options. In June 2023, we came to the council and talked about the proposed adjustments to community permit fees. In August, we talked about the increase to the water and sewer utility tax rates. And then earlier last fall, we came in and spoke about the business and occupation tax increases. Once again, I want to emphasize that the proposed adjustments to these taxes and fees in the 3 resolutions tonight, if approved, they would manage the existing structural deficit of current services. There likely is very little capacity with these actions to fund new services. Next slide. There are several other options that are available to the city council for potential new revenue sources. We focused on these 3 simply because they generate the most revenue and they are council approved actions. There are other options available to the city that do generate significant amounts of new tax revenue, but they do require voter approval. In terms of dollar amounts on an annual basis, the resolution that's presented to the council today for consideration of increasing building and permit fees would generate about $100,000 annually in new revenue. Increasing the tax rates on the water and sewer utilities that do business in the city from 8% to 10% would generate about $400,000 annually in new revenue. And then increasing the business and occupation tax rate from 0.1% to 0.2% would generate the lion's share of that new revenue of $1.7 million per year. Next slide. As a reminder, this is the forecast of the city's general fund looking through the next 10 years. The blue lines indicate the forecasted operating expenditures of the general fund. The solid black line that runs horizontally in the chart, that is the revenue forecast, assuming current tax rates and current fee levels. As you well know, and I think the lobbyist mentioned as well, that your property taxes do increase every year, but only by 1%, excluding any new construction. Similarly, sales tax revenue does increase generally each year in response to economic activity, and we've tried to mirror those growth rates in that solid black line. But that black line falls below those blue columns every single year, kind of later in the forecast. And so the dotted line that runs horizontally in the chart shows the impact of new revenues from these 3 options. Next slide. So the first resolution addresses specific planning and building permit fees that are paid for by applicants for building and land use permits. The recommendations for these adjustments, they are based on a 2019 cost of service study of permit fees. We looked at the actual cost to provide service for these permit actions compared to the city's existing fees. And from that analysis presented some proposed options to move them closer to cost of service. It's important to emphasize that absent charging full cost for these services, they're still being provided by the city. They're just being subsidized by other general fund revenues. We've adjusted our proposed fees from the 2019 study to reflect current inflationary adjustments over the last several years. That's the 2024 estimated fees. In terms of, next slide, please. We often are asked kind of what about the market rate for these services? What do other cities charge for similar planning and permit fees? Based on our review of surrounding cities, the city's existing permits and the fees for those permits are somewhere near the bottom of the market. These adjustments move the city's the Burien's fees that are up for consideration around to the middle or upper middle levels. But once again, these numbers aren't really, our recommendations aren't based on the market, they're based on the cost of service work that we did in 2019. And with that, I think the next slide is the direction or discussion by City Council on this resolution.
Can I ask a question? Can we go back to the graph one slide ago? Shoreline exemption. What is that fee? And why does Bothell outstretch everyone by 3 times more than everyone else?
I can speak in general terms. The choice when we look at land use planning, land use fees, which this kind of falls under that flavor of permit action. It's a land use action. We typically see land use actions and the fees for those below the cost of service and many times well below. Cost recovery levels for planning fees often in this state, based on my experience, tend to run 10 to 20% of cost. But it's a wide range. It could be 10% for one city and 80% for another city. And so my guess is for Bothell, they choose to recover a much higher share of those costs than other cities.
So who's paying a shoreline exemption fee?
Oftentimes it could be a resident who wants to do development or redevelopment on their property and
On the shoreline.
on the shoreline, and it falls under specific rules and guidances, and they're seeking an exemption from one or more of those requirements.
So you're recommending we increase our shoreline exemption fee from right now that's only taking in, what is that, 222?
Dollars.
Was that?
No, that's the cost of the fee charged to
Oh,
a
the cost of
single
the fee.
applicant.
Got it. Okay. So it could be more.
The fee amount? Yes. So our recommended level recommendations we have here were based first on the actual cost and getting somewhere closer to the cost of service. Our recommendations, I think, in most cases aren't covering the full cost. Once again, going back to the idea that most land use fees in this area that cities assess are oftentimes well below the cost of service because generally there is a policy goal for land use actions that benefit not just the private developer, but also to the public in general. And cities tend to acknowledge that private and public benefit in land use fees, which is why they may sometimes subsidize those costs.
So this specific fee, this shoreline exemption fee proposed, $607, would cover the cost of someone going through the administrative work to handle that.
I'm going to double check the answer. It moves it more towards cost, whether it's to full cost recovery or not. I have to double check on that. But it's moving that number from well below to closer to the cost.
I would personally like to see that to make sure we're either meeting the cost, i.e. not losing any money. In fact, I wouldn't even be opposed to seeing if we could gain some funds from those fees, because if you got shoreline property, you are able to cover a fee for the work done to ensure that your property meets all those standards. So I'd personally be curious to see to make sure that we're meeting, if not exceeding that cost. But I don't know where the rest of the council is on that, and I don't know what we'd have to do to see that after we vote on these measures you have before us. So any other questions from council? Okay, then I would like to, go with Councilmember Moore.
Is this an appropriate time to move to place this item on the consent agenda?
It is an appropriate
I,
time.
I move to place this item on the consent agenda. The next
Just specifically number 506.
Correct.
Okay, is there a second?
I second.
Okay, moved and seconded to place resolution number 506 on the consent agenda at the next meeting. All those in, any discussion or comments?
Just really briefly, although I see that discrepancy with Bothell and it really jumped out to me as well. I think that this was developed as a way to minimize the cost burden to people in Burien while increasing our revenue. And I really appreciate the care that was put into putting us well within other cities, but bringing up our revenue to more closely meet our actual expenses.
Any other comments? So I guess my question would be if there is a way to see if that shoreline exemption fee meets the cost, I think I'd like to bring that back to be considered if it does in fact have a higher need.
If it's helpful, we could share that if council wanted to move forward with what was being recommended for now, council can always make adjustments to increase costs.
Great.
So absolutely, to your point, if council was interested in passing what is being recommended, great, we could always then provide more information and costs can be adjusted upward.
And before we vote on any of these, city manager, could you say to the whole council what you said to me a few days ago around the impact this will have for us as a city? Like this will essentially, if our trends continue, we'll have closed a massive deficit, a fiscal deficit in the city. If trends continue the way they're continuing.
I'm trying to, Mayor and council, yes, I think I was just trying to not step on my potential congratulatory comments
right.
At the end, but yes, absolutely. This is, if council were to adopt the recommendations made by staff at this point, it would be a huge step forward and one that very few cities make, quite frankly, because it is getting us back to level funding.
Okay, with that, we'll take a vote on the first one here. So all those in favor of resolution number 506, please raise your hand or say aye. Councilmember Garcia?
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous approval of resolution number 506. Moving on to the second one, introduction to ordinance 836, water and sewer utility.
Great, okay. The second revenue option we looked at. Oh, and it's red, it's turned on. I thought red is the bad color. Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's good. The second council revenue option we looked at was increasing the city's utility tax that's assessed on water and sewer utilities that do business in the city limits from 8% to 10%. Want to point out just as context that in the state of Washington, utility taxes are one of the key revenue sources for municipalities and the general funds that are part of city government. Utility taxes are third only to sales tax revenue and property tax revenue as key funding sources for cities in the state. Across the state, you can see that they represent about 14% on average of city general fund revenue. Property tax at 31% and sales tax revenue at 36%. I know I said this before, but I think it goes as saying that it's important to remember that in this state, every state's different in terms of revenue, but in the state of Washington, we often refer to utility tax revenue as a third leg of this three-legged stool that city governments rely on for general fund revenue sources. Next slide. So the council option would increase the tax rate from 8% to 10%. By comparison, the most common tax rate assessed by local governments that do assess this tax is 6%. Now, there are cities that charge above 10 and sometimes well above 10% for context. The state law does not limit the city to assess a certain rate. And so it can be much higher than 10%, but in this case, we were looking at the proposed 10% rate. Increasing the tax rate to this level will generate about $400,000 in additional annual revenue. And the higher tax rate assessed utilities would likely increase water and sewer bills for customers who receive services from these utilities. The reason I say likely is it's really up to their prerogative how they choose to assess that expenditure to their customers. As a planning level high estimate, we estimate about a $2 per month residential bill impact from this tax increase. Emphasizing it's preliminary and really the authority really belongs to utilities to decide how they pass that expenditure on to their customers. And with that, I think that's the end of that option.
Okay, council, is there a motion? Councilmember Ramada? Oh,
I'd like to approve ordinance number 836 and move it and place it on the consent agenda of the next regular meeting.
is there a second?
I second.
Moved and seconded to place ordinance number 836 on the consent agenda of the next business meeting. Any comments?
Just want to say that, it hurts to pay more taxes, but we also need to make sure that we're fiscally responsible for the city and being able to have our operating budgets. And we've had some shortfalls. Inflation's been terrible. The city's struggling just like we are in our households, but I don't take this lightly. But I know that we gotta bring this budget up to where we're gonna be functioning with legal obligations that we have to function as a city. Thank you.
Councilmember Moore?
I have a question, I'm not sure who it's for, regarding utility rates. Is there financial support for people that have difficulty with utilities?
Yes, there is a city program in place where the senior residents can apply. The city clerk's office runs that, administers that program.
Thank you.
Just a little history there. When we first had this come up, gosh, in 2021, we made sure we had a utility tax relief, the utility tax assistance program. And we had data presented to us on how many people utilized that program, I think earlier this year. Okay. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Councilmember Ake, Councilmember Ramada, Councilmember Moore, Councilmember Andrade, Councilmember Garcia, how do you vote?
Nay.
I vote nay, and Councilmember Deputy Mayor Moore votes nay. So that's a 4-3 passage. Councilmember Ake, Andrade, Moore, and Mata, yes. Myself, Mora, and Garcia, no. Okay, moving on to the next one, 838.
All right, the third and final option we presented was increasing the city's business and occupation tax rate. The revised Code of Washington outlines the administrative and legal requirements of city business taxes. These taxes are assessed on gross receipts, gross sales. Businesses are classified into one of 4 business categories, and the city can apply a different tax rate to each of these business categories, but it must assess that rate equally to all businesses within that category. Utilities such as power, water, telephone, and garbage services are exempt from these taxes. The city can set the tax rate at a maximum rate of 0.20% unless approved by voters. Just in brief history, the city first adopted the B&O tax rate in 2002 at a rate of 0.05%. So it's 1/20th of 1%. The tax rate then increased to 1/10 of 1% in 2015, and that's where you're seeing that spike on the chart in 2015. That simply reflects an increase in the tax rate itself, and revenues since that point have steadily remained at the current levels each year thereafter. Just as a reminder, this of the 3 options, this generates the lion's share of new revenue, estimated at $1.7 million annually in new tax revenue. Next slide, please. Just in terms of some specifics, there are exemptions in the city and across the state for paying this tax. Businesses who report less than $200,000 in gross receipts in the state, or less than $20,000 in gross receipts within just Burien, are exempt from paying this tax rate. And so they would not be, they're currently not paying taxes on their gross receipts, nor will they pay an increase from this change in the code. And with that, I think that wraps up the last revenue option.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Councilmember Mata?
I have a motion to approve ordinance number 838 and move to place on the next on the consent agenda of our next regular meeting.
Is there a second? Councilmember Andrade seconds. Any comments?
I'm a business owner. I'm a small business owner. I gotta tell you, this is a very tough vote for me because I'm only seeing taxes and unfunded liabilities and profit margins are just not there. I also understand that we gotta have a functioning city and we have, we have some priorities that we have to take care of, and that's making sure we align our ability to pay our bills. So I made this motion not lightly, and I'm sure I'll hear it from the number cruncher at my office tomorrow. So, but I am in favor of this motion.
Councilmember Moore?
I just want to thank the two of you for your great patience and persistence in bringing this issue up so that we really understood it. This is I think, a difficult thing to vote yes for, and you've really helped us get to an understanding of the sources of revenue, the choices we have, and the importance of making those choices well. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? All right, all those in favor of ordinance number 838, please raise your hand or say aye. Councilmember Akey, Mayor Schilling, Councilmember Mata, Councilmember Moore, Councilmember Andrade, Councilmember Garcia, how do you vote?
Nay.
Nay from Councilmember Garcia and a nay from Deputy Mayor Mora. So that vote passes 5-2.
Mayor, if I may?
Yes, please go
Council,
ahead.
If I may address you all. Pardon my reading, but this is one of those situations where I really would like to acknowledge what has just occurred. It is very easy for cities to enter debt spending and deficit spending. This is made easy because there is a need to meet the needs of the community by people that are focused on meeting that need. So elected officials are elected and work to try to provide support to people in the community. It is incredibly difficult to exit deficit spending. It is just almost not something that happens within any particular frame of time. So efforts were started under my predecessor, Brian Wilson, and some relief was found many years ago. But it has been many years since this particular issue, which is arguably the most important issue for many cities, because this is what allows cities to actually pay for services, parks, human services, everything that a city does to try to meet for the needs of people. But this council has made it its priority to lead Burien out of deficit spending. This is a major accomplishment. So I'd like to acknowledge that. Thank you very much. Your decision is allowing staff to now build towards the future. So we could now count towards being at level funding, and we can now count towards adding to the base that this council has created for us. And we have a great team. Your department directors, your staff, all levels of staff are excellent, and they will help to build a very solid team going forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, City Manager, and thank you all in the finance team for this as well. I think this was a major priority of the council at the very beginning of the year. And I want to say thanks to the council too for taking hard votes, but we also got to make sure we keep Burien a economically friendly place, attract more businesses, get more folks to come to Burien and spend more money, build more houses that use utilities. That's the way we keep growing our financial capabilities. So those are all priorities for everyone at this dais. I know that's true, and all the staff here with us too. So thank you very much. moving on to the planning calendar and just reminding council of a request from staff for if you have a item that has not been brought up before by council, to please have a meeting with staff, a meeting with the city manager, the city attorney, to determine what your item is, what needs to go into it, if it's feasible. So that's just a reminder for folks, moving forward on planning calendar items, just because staff has asked for the ability to sit down with council members before we make something, come up, a new item. So any items for the planning calendar? Okay, seeing none, we are adjourned at 9:46.